Soujirou Hinomuro is fed up with his life already. Like any local, he relocated to Tokyo once he got a job over there. Before he realized it, years passed, and he's already in his mid-30s, burned out, overworked, and underpaid, something you and I can relate to. The poor guy's even made to work during holidays without fair pay. One fateful night while he was on his way home, Soujirou was busy fiddling with his phone when he absent-mindedly crossed the road. Dazed and worked to the bone, he didn't notice the oncoming truck, so the inevitable happened. Soujirou was hit. With his consciousness slowly fading into the darkness, he suddenly heard a woman's voice. She told Soujirou that he didn't survive the collision. And in his mind, Soujirou thought people who passed disappeared. Hearing him say that made the woman chuckle. Then she proceeded to relate how Soujirou cleaned her statue one time. It was that simple act of kindness that warranted this act of kindness from the goddess. She pitied poor Soujirou, which is why she decided to intervene, telling him that she'll have him spend his next life in another world as he is. So basically, he's respawning but in a different game this time. Looking at it from that perspective, she asked Soujirou first what he wanted to do. Soujirou paused for a moment before telling her that he wanted to live a quiet life. He didn't want to relive the same boring and unfulfilling life he had just had back then. If anything, the home-cooked meals he made in the countryside during camping were the best he ever had. Looking back, Soujirou remembered how much he loved camping, doing crafts and making things, which is what he wanted to do in his next life. The goddess became even more gleeful when she heard that, thinking it must be fate that things aligned like this. With that said, she gifted him the divine artifact, craft gear. Additionally, she explains that it has 2 powers and that he can conjure it whenever he needs it. But for now, the goddess stores craft gear inside Soujirou's body, as the latter thanked her for the gift. With that, she sent him on his new world, but not before introducing herself. She is the mother goddess Anna, blessing both his body and soul to help him reach his happiness. She beamed brightly, happy that the last power left within her was given to someone like Soujirou, leaving the latter a little clueless. Just like that, Soujirou respawned, body intact and a whole new world to explore. Of course, he had to check if his body was acting as it should, and to his surprise, it felt lighter and more fluid than his last one. It's one thing to be blessed with a normal body, but a healthy one? Soujirou just knows he was that blessed, especially with how he's also been given a divine artifact. Speaking of which, Soujirou conjured craft gear. As soon as he called on the item, it appeared in his hand in a flash in the shape of a pocket knife. Upon closer inspection, it's much smaller, but it does fit pretty well in his hand. He also realized that chanting the artifact's name allows him to summon it whenever, which is very Fushiguro of him. Well, divine artifact aside, Soujirou's current concern is that he's in the middle of the wilderness. This is where he low-key thanked his hobbies, which are solo camping and leisure camping. He's got the fit, the looks, and the tools, so now it's about living the camping life. Soujirou locked in and started to assess the situation, staring at craft gear. Since this is a new world, would it be possible for divine weapons to suddenly transform into some other thing? He closed his eyes and put this theory to the test. While he's at it, he remembered what the goddess said. The second use of craft gear is tool, which turns the device into anything he could think of. No sooner did he do this than the artifact turned into a hatchet. Given the circumstances, he had to try its quality, so without further ado, he zeroed in on the nearest tree and hurled the hatchet with all his might. There was an explosive crack as soon as the tool came in contact with the tree trunk. Before he realized it, the trunk was already falling straight to his face. If he didn't shout, "Wait!" at the last minute, he would have been string beans in a minute. Just like that, the tree stopped midair. That's when he heard the goddess's voice as she explained the artifact's second power. It can fix objects. Unlike regular craftsmanship, where you need a workplace along with the tools and equipment, the artifact's Fix Object option allows Soujirou to build things with less paraphernalia. He just needs to use the power of his imagination. For example, when creating a birdhouse, one needs a wooden plank, a workbench, and even a hammer and nails, among many other things. According to the goddess, he can fix anything anywhere as long as he can imagine it. And yes, he can even fix time and space. In a nutshell, it's all about convenience, so even if the explanation was a little late, Soujirou forgave her for that. Now that he has a better understanding of craft gear, Soujirou fetched it and realized how it's a bit tricky to handle. With that, he resumed work, and this time he thought he'd make a staff. After all, it's one of the most convenient tools used when walking on uneven terrain. Soujirou found a nice branch with just the perfect length and began to shape it accordingly. While doing so, he realizes once again how he needed to handle craft gear with extra care, and before long he manages to finish the majority of the staff's body. He proceeded to graft its grip, and before long he finally finished it. Soujirou gave it a little test and found all of it to his liking, save for a little adjustment on the grip. Looking at what he has, Soujirou has a knife with an impressive cutting edge, coupled with various tools. Plus, there's also the ability to fix and disassemble at will. which he believes is enough to enable him to live in the wilderness. Now that he's done with his staff, it's time to explore Jumanji, this new world. And the first thing Soujirou needed to find was water. Humans can't live without water for 3 days. If they can't drink for a day, then dehydration would kick in really fast. He headed north, thinking how dangerous it would be to keep still in such an unfamiliar place. On the upside, he has good faith that the goddess wouldn't put him in a dangerous world. Walking around the jungle like this, it made him realize the stark difference between the wilderness and his previous corporate life. And for that alone, he felt immensely grateful because he was finally free. No sooner did he think of that than his stomach started to grumble. He is both free and hungry, which is why finding food is now included in his agenda. To his surprise, he quickly found the river, although the water looked a little too gray to be potable. Thankfully, he's not feeling thirsty yet, so he decided to focus on other Animal Crossing activities like building a shelter. Nights in the forest can get pretty chilly, so having a warm bed is a must. He decided to have his little shelter placed a little further away from the river since it can get pretty cold, then proceeded to gather the necessities. He found branches and a vine to secure the framework of his shelter and put them into position. After that, he got more branches and leaned them against the framework's inclination before putting dry grass and leaves on top of them as protection against rain. For his bed, he got a couple of smaller cut logs and laid them inside. He covered it with leaves, and with that, his shelter was done. As he sat inside, he realized just how useful craft gear is. If he used the regular tools like he did back on Earth, it would take him hours just to cut and size the branches. He didn't expect to finish all of this in an hour. The man barely even broke a sweat. He let out a big stretch, still full of energy, when he heard a rustling noise from nearby. As soon as he turned, he saw a large rabbit with a horn protruding from its forehead. This Umbrian-looking thing but in white is roughly the size of a medium dog, and just as he was assessing whether it was friendly or not, the creature dashed straight to him using its horn. Luckily, Soujirou's got fast hands and managed to block it using his staff. He activated his craft gear and fashioned his staff to secure the rabbit's horn in it, so now the poor creature is left hanging and scrambling in midair. His camping skills came in clutch again, remembering how mountain animals can be pretty wild and feral. Remembering what just happened made Soujirou thank the goddess again before turning to the rabbit. The creature, knowing what might happen to it later, tried to pull the cutest face it could to get out of trouble. Unfortunately, Soujirou only smiled back and told the rabbit that it would be his dinner no matter what. Soujirou quickly got to work. After unaliving the creature, he drew its blood, took out the internal organs, and soaked the body in the river for cleansing. After that, he skinned it and assembled the meat. He checked if the body had any poison pouches, and fortunately there weren't any. What he did find was that the creature's heart is shaped oddly, making him wonder if the rabbit was different from a regular one, as if its large horn isn't a dead giveaway. He had just finished assembling it when he heard a rustling noise from behind again. Soujirou quickly turned and saw a black puppy with strange markings on its forehead, which is practically a variant of Fushiguro's black demon dog in JJK. Seeing how cute it was, Soujirou instantly beamed as the puppy looked at him curiously. It doesn't look like it belongs to someone, nor does it look like a stray, but he offered some of the rabbit's innards for the pup to eat. The little fellow wolfed down those innards, and that's when Soujirou noticed the bow tied to the pup's fur. Maybe this little guy belongs to someone after all. He wasn't able to take a longer look because the puppy ran off soon after. Soujirou fetched the crate containing the innards and noticed that the puppy only ate the heart. A scream from behind left him shaking, and he turned to see an elven woman standing on a tree branch. She asks him if he saw a puppy, but before Soujirou could answer, the elven lady thought he must have eaten him already. He quickly dismissed it, saying the innards were different, and pointed her in the direction where the puppy ran. Upon hearing that, she heaved a sigh of relief and thanked Soujirou before running off to find the dog. Now that he's all by himself, Soujirou couldn't believe that the day when he could see an actual elf would come like, "My brother, you're in an isekai manga." Anyway, back to business. Soujirou got all his essentials ready. He already has a shelter, bed, food, and water, but most importantly, fire. Lighting your own fire can be pretty tricky since you need the right materials for it. Dry conifer branches and firewood are a must, and coupled with craft gear, he was able to create a bowl to create a fire. He thought of using the bow drill method to ignite a fire. As soon as he got that going, he started to boil water in a bowl made from jahi tree bark. Everything that Soujirou is currently using is sourced from the trees and other resources in the area. Time to check the water. Soujirou blew on it a little before taking a small sip. It doesn't taste weird or anything, so he should be fine probably. Next up, preparing the meat. He already had a small portion being cooked on a small stone plate. The latter he created by cutting a portion from a small boulder. Back to his dungeon meishi duties, he checked to see if the meat was cooked well on both sides before serving it on a wooden plate. After saying his thanks, he finally tried it and was surprised at how flavorful the rabbit's meat is. The meat is similar to the tenderness of a chicken, but it's more akin to duck meat. For an unseasoned meat, Soujirou couldn't help but sing praises about how delicious it is, especially since it's achieved through a series of great efforts. After he finished eating, Soujirou sat quietly by the fire. He relished the sound of burning wood and the warmth of the fire since it had been a while since he experienced such an enjoyable feeling. Since he had already eaten and his shelter was all set up, Soujirou thought he could now relax a bit. After all, one of the crucial aspects of survival is to maintain your body temperature, which he already accomplished. Although he already has the essentials, of course, it's only natural to want more. And in Soujirou's case, he was already thinking about making the proper wall and tableware. His thought process got cut off when he noticed the puppy from before appeared again. Now where was that elf from before? Since it's just him and the pup, Soujirou took him under his wing and fed the little fella some meat. He promised to find the dog's owner tomorrow morning, but for now, they decided to sleep together. The next morning, Soujirou set out to find the pup's owner, with the latter placed comfortably inside his bag. As he went along, Soujirou made sure to etch a mark as a reminder of his way back. While doing so, he couldn't help but wonder if there were other elves like her. The pup's ear perked up before it jumped down and started growling toward something. The little fella kept low, snarling at something Soujirou couldn't see. A moment later, they heard a loud screech from what he assumed was a monster. From the beast's cry alone, it doesn't look like it's a territorial dispute, which only means it must be fighting the elven lady from before. He bolted quickly toward the sound as the crashing sounds got louder and louder. At the crime scene, the elven lady from before was busy fighting a griffin with just a towel around her body. It looks like she got attacked while she was bathing, but before it could get worse, the puppy started barking to get the monster's attention. Once the monster noticed Soujirou, it flew straight to him, but the latter was prepared for its attack. He had already changed craft gear into a hammer and threw the item toward the monster's chest, as the griffin was knocked out after crashing into a tree. Once again, Soujirou's reminded how dangerous craft gear is, but he couldn't lament over it for too long. He heard the familiar voice and turned to see the elven woman praising him for taking down the griffin with just one hit. Looking at her, Soujirou low-key froze in place because he just got whiplashed by the elven lady's sexy no jutsu, but he tried to play it cool. She made small talk, apologizing for her fit because she just got attacked by the monster while bathing. Soujirou apologized too, saying he didn't mean to interrupt and that he's just a mere human. Upon hearing that, she points out that no human can do what he just did to the griffin. But before they could talk it over, Soujirou handed her his clothes as cover. She took his offer and used it to cover herself while explaining how she had a hard time fighting off the griffin with just a short sword. She promised to pay him back, but Soujirou told her that she shouldn't worry given how the little black pup kept him warm last night. The elven lady explained that she found the pup after it was abandoned by its parents, but who knew she'd be the one who ended up getting saved instead. With that, she finally introduced herself as Misty, a high elf living in the sacred forest of God's tree. Soujirou did likewise, saying he just got to the forest yesterday. Fast forward to later, Misty finally changed to proper clothing, even fishing for compliments from Soujirou. Of course, our guy is pretty honest and upfront, which left Misty feeling giddy. Now to more important problems. Misty's belongings were ransacked by other demons, leaving her with only clothes to spare. Even her bow was taken, much to her frustration, so the ever-gentlemanly Soujirou offered to take her to a village nearby, if there was one. When she heard his suggestion, Misty wasn't too keen on doing so, explaining that the village is pretty far away from them. Besides, she's been living alone in this forest for the last decade, leaving Soujirou confused. Is there some kind of history behind that? She briefly explained that she left the village a long time ago and you may call it pettiness, but she's living in the forest because she's being stubborn. The Divine Tree Forest is blessed by the elven ancestors, even if their descendants, Misty's people, can no longer live there. At the moment, only the creatures and the trees are the living things in the forest. Misty took it upon herself to find ways to utilize the place. Given how he's only a day old at the place, Soujirou asked why the forest was untouched for many years, leaving Misty shocked. Did he really not know? Instead of explaining, Misty drew her blade and tried etching at the tree. She showed him how the bark was as hard as stone. Plus, the monsters and plants in the area are way too strong. According to her, the ancestors of the forest created the place because they kept losing the treasures used to control their struggles. In reply, Soujirou pulled out craft gear to try his hand at the bark. The blade pierced through the trunk just like a marshmallow. Not one to lose, Misty saw it as a challenge and tried stabbing the trunk harder, pushing in way too much force than necessary. But she couldn't even push her blade to the hilt. In the end, she caved in and admitted defeat. For his part, Soujirou explained that he's reliant on the tool in his hand, explaining that it was a divine artifact. After explaining, Misty bowed again, showing more respect, not knowing that she was actually referring to the sacred one all along. Of course, Soujirou didn't want to be referred to as such, and told her she should continue to speak normally. But who knew the artifact was much more valuable than he originally thought? Anyway, Misty offered to fetch him salt since there is some stock left at the hidden warehouse. Sure, salt is a must in every cuisine, but Soujirou didn't want Misty to go through all that trouble for him. She insisted, saying that she's a woman who keeps her promises and she owes him a lot already. Before he could contest it, Misty went ahead to fetch salt, leaving Soujirou with the pup behind again. Even though Misty ran into a troublesome predicament, Soujirou found it admirable that she took it all in stride, a sentiment echoed by the goddess. With that, he decided to cook food for her as thanks and got his craft gear ready. While Misty was busy gathering salt, Soujirou also busied himself gathering food for their shared meal. He caught the same rabbit from before, and this time he also fetched a few wild greens that looked the same as in his previous world, hoping that they wouldn't give them an upset stomach. To be fair, he did try them on yesterday by placing them against his skin and chewing them for a bit to see if they're edible or not. A moment later, Misty returned with a bag of salt, and she was surprised to see Soujirou cooking. She handed him the rock salt, apologizing that it may not be enough, but he accepted it most graciously. To make up for it, she offered to help out in any way she could, though she also gave a heads up that she could only do limited magic and fight with a short sword. Well, couldn't she just buy the items in town? According to her, it's not possible since she doesn't have any money. And to make matters worse, she also lost the materials for trade. She could only sigh and admit how hard it would be to go through all of that, especially since she has the little one to take care of too. Soujirou was more than happy to be in charge. Besides, he likes dogs too. But more importantly, Misty was curious about the meal he was cooking. Soujirou patiently explained the process of taking the broth, extracting it from the rabbit's meat and spine. Although it's good, he couldn't help but wish he had some dashi for that extra flavor, a concept that's foreign to Misty. She was happy enough with the huge rabbit he caught as their meal, excited to eat it. This time, Soujirou couldn't help but ask her how she would eat the rabbit if he weren't there. She blatantly told him that she'd just skin and roast the rabbit as it is, but it would be nice if they had some traditional spices. When he heard that, Soujirou immediately thought of McCormick and other condiments. Well, it's no use mulling over things they don't have. So he urged Misty to play with the pup while he finished his cooking. At the end of the day, Soujirou couldn't give up on his taste buds as expected from a man raised on Food Wars. After some time, he finally finished cooking their meal, which consisted of rabbit grass soup and grilled rabbit tenderloin meat. Upon tasting the soup, Misty couldn't help but beam at how delicious it was, just as Soujirou quietly savored his. Compared to yesterday, today's rabbit meat is more tender and delicious. After eating, Misty tells him that he should name the pup since she believes it would be great if the little fella could receive a sacred name. Soujirou decided to name the pup Matsukaze after one of the famous war horses that belonged to the samurai lord Toshimasu Maeda. Misty doesn't have to know that he named the pup after a famous anecdote about the samurai lord while he was in the bath. Misty's just happy that Matsukaze has a name now, while Soujirou tries to divert the attention by asking if they could scavenge the griffin's body for resources. She tells him that the creature's meat is edible, but it's also terrible. However, they could use the griffin's claws and the mass stone. It's a stone formed in the body of a magical beast that became strong. It's usually located in the meat pouch right next to the heart, which also makes it a vital spot. Misty tells him that they should collect it because it's considered valuable, though she's not getting any of their hopes up. They headed straight to the griffin's body and retrieved the mass stone. Just as Misty expected, the creature's mass stone is shattered due to the force Soujirou used earlier. This time he made a mental note to aim for the creature's head to keep the mass stone intact. But Misty wasn't too bummed out. If anything, he warns him that he should be careful since some creatures are pretty strong. Since the griffin's mass stone is all shattered up, she asks him if he could give it to Matsukaze instead, which Soujirou agrees to. She explains that even if Matsukaze is still small, the pup is still a demon beast, which is why it needs to absorb more magic before it can grow strong. Well, that explains why the little fella was eating the rabbit's organs the first time they met. Anyway, they also scavenged the griffin's hook claws. According to Misty, these have purification properties. If they put them in drinking water, it won't upset the stomach. Plus, it also stimulates wound healing and is a great food preservative. Soujirou only meant to ask for half of the hook claws, but Misty insists that he take them all. On his part, Soujirou thinks that if he splits them in half, then they may have some use for it later. Misty agreed easily, and since she was already at it, Misty asked if she could set up her base near Soujirou's. For one, Matsukaze had already grown attached to him, so it would be ideal to live near each other. Soujirou hesitated, but she did have a point. It would feel lonely without Matsukaze and Misty helping him out a lot. As if she read his thoughts, Misty went ahead and told him that if she were in Soujirou's shoes, she'd feel much better if there were someone by her side. After all, there are a lot of surprising things in a foreign world, so it would be nice to have someone to rely on. Soujirou couldn't help but break into a laugh at what she said. But there was some truth in there after all. He did feel surprised the first time they met. It's his first time meeting an elf after all. She even recreated their meeting, but with more exaggeration this time, earning another laugh from Soujirou. Speaking of which, it's been so long since he was able to laugh wholeheartedly like this. Misty beams at it, saying it would be better to have someone like her by his side. Her smiling face just made him realize again that he really was reborn. Everything happened so fast that he finds it hard to keep up sometimes, but looking at Misty now, he finds relief. With that, he tells her that he should be the one asking her to get along with him, and with that, the three decided to live together. Since Misty's place is a ramshackle shack because of the monster's attacks, and Soujirou has no attachment to his original place, the two decided to relocate to a better location. Once they settled on a place, both of them did their thing, with Misty setting up the monster repellent and Soujirou offering to build a new house for her. She's a little taken aback, given how it's not really a problem for her to build another house, but Soujirou's already in his fix-it-Felix mode, adding that he wanted to get more used to craft gear. Since he was insistent, Misty left him to it. With Misty gone, he also started on his task, beginning with the site preparation. After digging the ground, he refilled it, leveled it, and tamped it down to level the ground. Once that was settled, he moved on to the framework and started working on the tree trunks. He learned from his first day how cutting it hastily could cause the trunk to fall flat on top of him, which is why he took extra care to cut the trunk at an angle. He repeated this process all throughout, and before long, Soujirou already had a pile of logs ready just as Misty returned from casting her monster repellent spell. Of course, she was amazed by how Soujirou worked it all out quickly, but the latter remained humble and pointed out that she's the real magician between the two of them. Given how Soujirou accomplished so much more than she did, Misty asked if she could help with other things, so Soujirou asked if she could help carry the logs back to their place. Similar to how he built his first shelter, he created the framework of the new structure using timber logs. This time, he opted for a four-walled building with a lean-to roof design. For the roof, he used tree bark cut into strips as protection against rain and other elements, fully enclosing the newly built structure. The only downside to the new house is that it's too dark inside. Fortunately for him, Misty has magic, illuminating the room with her light orb. Soujirou looks forlorn, hoping he also has a magic skill of some sort. But the elven noble tells him that she could barely sense any magical power from him, which kind of makes him a variant of Astadot. But back to his hut building, Soujirou cut off a portion of the wall to serve as a door and proceeded to create a fireplace. By doing so, they can use it as a heater and even allow them to cook without stepping outside of the building. He quickly moved on to digging the trenches around the house so they could have a simple canal where rainwater could flow. After that, he decided to take a short break with Matsukaze, where they sat near the riverbed. They were joined shortly by Misty, telling Soujirou that the soil in the area can be used as building material. After that, she sat a little too close for comfort to Soujirou. After a moment's silence, she started flailing around, commenting that she could only help with the gathering of materials to make the house sturdier. Soujirou, on the other hand, feels a little envious that she could use magic, which he thinks is much cooler. When she heard that, Misty told her that he shouldn't speak lightly of magic. In his defense, magic is pretty handy, there's no smoke or fire, and it's convenient too. As he mulled over this thought, Misty went on rambling about how fun it must be to make your ideas tangible, and even more fun because Soujirou's there with her. She even revealed how she had never seen a shovel before, mistaking it for a scoop, so Soujirou had to explain the difference between the two. Once their break is over, they proceed to use the soil from the riverbed as wall putty and add a few more building materials to make it sturdier. They coat the outer walls with the combined putty to prevent drafts from coming inside their space. Finally, they used a bark sheet as a substitute for the door, and voila! They now have a new shelter. Misty is amazed again at how they were able to accomplish such a feat in a day, finding it hard to believe that she gets to live there. On his part, Soujirou thinks he fell short because he just created a make-do bed using a bundle of dried grass and tree bark. Still, he promised to create a better bed tomorrow, earning a teasing from Misty. They may be in a different world now, but even Misty knows a man particular about his bed has been to a lot of brothels, much to Soujirou's embarrassment. But to be clear, it's not like that at all. Fast forward to later that night, Misty goes over to Soujirou's house, informing him about how she'll be turning off the lights once she's asleep. With that, she asks if he wants his off too. But Soujirou says he'll be staying up longer since he's nearly done with his self-project. This piqued Misty's curiosity, asking him what he was making, just as Soujirou handed him a sculpted figurine of the goddess. He couldn't remember her face, so he could only sculpt with the memory of her voice guiding his hand. Misty's sure the goddess would appreciate it and asked what her name was. Soujirou told him that it's Anna and that she was the mother goddess, the progenitor of the gods. The name was unfamiliar to Misty, but maybe the older elves know about her. Just as Soujirou clutched the figure tightly, He remembers the goddess telling him that he was the last one. He feels his unworthiness creeping in since the goddess could have sent someone else with more ambition into this world, unlike him, who has a modest wish. Misty assured him that the goddess made the right choice because she opted for a man filled with kindness over fame and ambition. Someone like Misty, who has been living all her life clinging to her beliefs, is proof that taking pride in your morals is a good thing. In hindsight, one could consider it a strength. When he heard all of this, Soujirou felt a little more secure with himself, just as Misty assured him that the goddess probably liked someone like him. He got up and set the small sculpture on a small elevated altar, just as the two of them finally bade each other good night. Once Misty was again, Soujirou stared at the figurine again, thinking of his fervent wish of eating delicious food in a place where he could enjoy it best before he died. He thanked the goddess again, and made a note to make their campsite better tomorrow. Little did he know Soujirou would be facing one of the hardest questions in his life. It comes in the form of a skimpy-clad Misty, asking him if he wants to take a bath together. But before that, he will face a challenging wake-up call, something warm and wet that got him up in a shock. Misty was already up and stretching, greeting a sloppy-faced Soujirou with a good morning. From the looks of it, she already knew Matsukaze went lickitung on his face that morning. He went straight to their water reserve to have a drink of water, surprised that it was as clear as day. What do you know, the griffin's hook claws really have purifying properties. Soujirou was mumbling to himself about how he wanted to wash up using this water. Misty overheard him, so she excitedly asked if he wanted to bathe together. Poor Soujirou choked on his water and had to ask again if she was being serious, and apparently she is. Because of his hesitation, she had to ask if he's an occasional bather, which he obviously denied, saying he bathes daily. So great. With that, Misty headed first, but not before explaining the logic behind bathing together. You see, it's because while one of them washes, the other can stand guard and watch out for incoming monsters. It's a pretty effective countermeasure against monsters, and hearing her explanation made a lot of sense. Besides, she has faith in Soujirou too, which is why she invited him in the first place. Misty was the first one to go in, washing herself with a short towel wrapped around her body. Soujirou stood guard from afar, but he could see some pretty telling details about Misty's body. After a while, Misty approached him and told him that she was done. She handed him the towel he used, telling Soujirou that she would take it from there. Wait, is this the same towel she used as a bathrobe from before? Misty told him that it is, since it's the only available towel. But his mind's pretty hung up on the fact that this thin piece of cloth was just around Misty's body moments earlier. He dropped those thoughts soon after seeing Misty use her magic to dry her hair. Heck, it can even be used to dry clothes. Before she offered to do something ridiculous, Soujirou headed to the river and spent a quiet time bathing. After the two finally finished washing up, they had a simple breakfast courtesy of Soujirou. While eating, Misty asks what their agenda is for the day, with Soujirou saying he'll be making furniture and windows. He's more focused on craftsmanship, so he asks Misty to take care of hunting, something she's more than happy to do, especially since she's been meaning to start training Matsukaze too. Soujirou plans to start with making a table and chair, but to do so, he needs to make a table for the table first. He cut two thin boards and hollowed out a panel on each side to make them lighter. In the middle, he cut out a channel so he could interlock the boards together and create an X shape. With that, he got himself a cross stage and used a ceiling board as the tabletop. Looking at the house's plan, he started making mental notes for the placements of windows, chairs, and even the bed. At times like these, he couldn't help but miss a good old pen and paper. But you have to make do with what you have. So Soujirou continued his furniture making until he finished a dining table set. Now they can finally eat a civilized meal. As if on cue, Misty returned with a new beast in tow. She got Butterfree this time. She happily shows off the Silkimos, much to Soujirou's shock. What's even more shocking is that this spirit beast can communicate with Soujirou somewhat without speaking. Spirit beasts are different from regular animals and living things since they're believed to come from the fairy realm. The Misty translates on behalf of the Silkimos as she relates how the spirit beast suddenly appeared and floated on Sou's roof before expressing its intention to live with them. What's even more curious is that the spirit beast cannot talk, but its intentions can still get through, which makes it possible for Misty to understand it. Silkimos flew to the newly built table and activated its power, conjuring a beautiful cloth out of thin air and offering it to Soujirou. The creature offers to create cloth for Soujirou in exchange for allowing it to live with them. Of course, he was more than happy to welcome Silkimos into their growing brood. What's more, it even looks like he's starting to understand it too. Both Soujirou and Misty doted on the spirit beast until Matsukaze started snarling, annoyed at the newest family member. Soujirou sensed the growing tension, so he tried to get on the pup's good side, ruffling its fur just as Misty asked what the spirit beast's name should be. He thought they should call it Musubi, after the silkworm god, since the spirit beast also looks like a silkworm moth. The four of them gathered at the table with Soujirou failing to realize how he had made one of the biggest mistakes in his new life. Soujirou revels at how proud he was of the chair and table he just made, which is not bad for a first-timer. Now they can have a proper meal so he can finally sit back and relax, or not. He quickly got up and slammed both hands on the table, startling Misty and poor Musubi. This prompted her to ask if something was wrong. Soujirou told her that he needed to do something quickly and pulled a quick DIY on his workbench, piquing Misty's and Musubi's interest even more. On the other hand, we've got Soujirou, who's locked in on whatever he's building right now. He couldn't believe he forgot to make this one first. He's got his priorities messed up. Thankfully, Craft Gear cut his work time, so after getting all the components ready, he just needed to assemble them and prep the area. First things first, digging a deep and wide hole. After this, he set the foundation stones and laid the lumber planks on top before assembling the walls. Since he's pressed for time, he just did a makeshift loo, a simple structure that's assembled easily. On the inside, he cut a small hole in the floor and installed a cylindrical log-shaped object like a toilet bowl, complete with a seat and an openable lid. Then he got some leaves, filled the basin with water, along with the griffin's hook claws, installed the door, and it's done. He successfully constructed an outhouse to address their sanitary needs. Looking at his latest accomplishment now, Soujirou couldn't believe that he had gotten his priorities wrong. Although it was just a temporary fix, he couldn't help but wonder how they'll work out how to take care of their waste. But that's a problem for another day. Now Soujirou decided to test it out, and he couldn't be happier about this moment of peace and privacy. Seeing that it worked pretty well, he went and shared the good news with Misty, who also came to check their newly built outhouse. Seeing the structure was so put together in such a short time, even she was starting to worry that Soujirou was overdoing it, but it's all in a good day's work. The next day, their growing brood saw a new addition to the group. Musubi came flying, carrying Sandslash with them. The little fella stood on its hind legs, but all Soujirou could think about was that he was actually seeing an armadillo. Suddenly, it started flailing around. But of course, Soujirou couldn't understand what it was trying to say for the life of him. Thankfully, Misty came rushing over, overjoyed, and telling him that legendary creatures often flock around Soujirou. This one is a spirit beast called Riddles. It makes good soil and is pretty handy when it comes to field work. Looking at the creature, he asks if the spirit beast can be called Yukatama, named after the god of fertility. The latter turns to Misty and seems to tell her something. She translates for the beast, saying that the latter wants to take care of the plants and uses the soiled waste to care for the land. Soujirou quickly picked up that the beast wanted to use it as compost. Now that it's settled, Sojirou's only concern is what to feed them. He knows Musubi likes rice with leaves and salt water, but what about this guy? Misty suggests they feed him with wood, water, and fruits. There are a lot of strawberries and other wild fruits in the forest, as well as wood, obviously. Food and lodging aside, Soujirou and the god of fertility went straight to work. The first thing they needed to do was to dig up the tree stumps. If they only had an excavator, they would have accomplished all of that easily. But because he's in a different world, manual labor is key. One of the most important parts of digging out tree stumps is to cut off the roots, so it's a lot of digging and cutting, which can be pretty tiring. This was also the very reason why he had been putting off this task for a while now. Well, at least he had Craft Gear with him, so he's pretty sure the majority of the work will be cut in half. And what do you know? Craft Gear really delivered. The item changed into a chain block, and even without a tripod, it suspended itself mid-air. All Soujirou needed to do was attach the hook to the wood stump and pull it out. Just like that, he started pulling tree stumps one after the other, and before long he had cleared the area. Now it was the fertility god's turn. Soujirou told the spirit beast that he wanted a vegetable garden in the area, and the latter started tilling the soil shortly while he continued making pieces of furniture. After a little while, Soujirou took a break to check on Yukatama. To his shock, the creature had already finished tilling the whole field so it's ready for planting. He found the little guy busy shredding a wood scrap and thanked him for a job well done. Up next, Soujirou gave Musubi fur to weave clothes. For Yukatama, he gave the spirit beast internal organs and bones so that the former could use them as fertilizer. Matsukaze curiously approached Yukatama, seeing that the spirit beast had a large bone in its hand. Before long, the three creatures started playing together. Looking at them like this, he couldn't help but ask Misty why rare spirit beasts have been appearing in his home. To this, she told him that it must be because they want to bask in Soujou's divine aura. Because he made a small figurine of the goddess, it's only natural that divine energy will be emitted from there, which attracts the likes of spirit beasts. That's a pretty worrying thought, but Misty assured him that it's a good thing. Besides, the first time they met was due to a rare spirit beast as well, so he should take it as a good sign. He felt assured hearing her say that. So in reply, Soujirou told her that being with Misty makes him happy. That got the elven woman all flustered and blushing, not knowing that he sees her as good company since it tastes better to eat together. Speaking of eating, Misty brought fresh meat that day in the form of a giant boar. It seems that there really was some truth behind what she said back then, that a series of good things keep happening around Soujirou and in this world. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild, a cloaked figure approaches the concierge. After presenting their identification card, the concierge pales once she realizes who she was talking to. Iono of the Black Sea. Every pair of eyes turned to them as the adventurers started whispering about Iono. How could someone so scrawny be the notorious Iono? Wasn't he a royal court magician? The concierge asks Iono what they were doing there, and as it turns out, he's actually a she, and she wants to go to the Divine Tree Forest. This is bad. It's only a matter of time before Soujirou's salt runs out. Looking at the pebble-sized salt in his hand, he asks Misty where she gets the salt from. The elven noble replies that she got it at the human town downstream, and since they're running low on it, Misty suggests they should also gather other goods while they're at it. If they could sell all the materials they gathered while heading to town, they could even buy other stuff like ink or dye. At the mention of such, it was more than enough to get Soujirou on board. In fact, Misty had never seen him this excited until now. With that, they decided to head to town along with Musubi, leaving Matsukaze and Ukatama behind. Misty tells him that the journey to the nearest town would take them 3 days, since they'll be going on foot. If it were up to Misty alone, she could travel much faster than the average human, but suddenly her ears picked up something, thus cutting their conversation short. She quickly told Soujirou that something was approaching, pointing him in the direction of the sound. Not a moment later, a horned rabbit appeared and went straight to Soujirou. Lucky for them, the creature didn't get to reach Soujirou because Musubi intervened and countered the former before it could attack. Once again, the two are reminded that spirit beasts are pretty strong even though they're so fluffy. This was one of the main challenges of heading to town. The possibility of monster attacks is always high. Lucky for Soujirou, he has Misty, who can detect a monster's presence from afar so they won't be ambushed easily. Be that as it may, exercising utmost caution is a must, since they could still be attacked in groups, which happened a lot of times during their journey. They managed to fend off each monster attack until they met the biggest one yet, a two-headed giant serpent called the Koshi Saju. The two got into position. Soujirou became the decoy while Misty took care of one of the heads. She chopped it off in one fell swoop, then incinerated its head. The other head immediately lunged at her, only for Soujirou to take care of it with a one-hit attack. As he walked over to retrieve craft gear, the snake's body recoiled and almost struck him. Fortunately, Soujirou blocked it using his walking staff and used it to hold the tail down. The snake stopped struggling after getting its body and tail pinned down. Bless Misty for warning him earlier that the snake's body can still move even after its heads are severed. Speaking of Misty, she quickly checked up on Soujirou as soon as she got down. But more importantly, she needed him to take down one of the snakeheads because it was about to regenerate. After crushing it with his craft gear, they finally defeated the giant snake for good. Misty got all giddy because they managed to take down the Kisho Saju without injuries and by just attacking its head. In his mind, Soujirou wasn't feeling too celebratory since he kept on wondering if there were other ways to take it down apart from tearing it to pieces. Once again, he felt grateful for how handy craft gear was. The real reason why Misty was on high is because they got an undamaged magic stone and a high-priced gall. Musubi came in time carrying their bags as they scavenged the creature's remains for things they could sell. After scavenging, they went on their way, got attacked by another monster, and then settled in for the day. Soujirou hung his hammock, courtesy of Musubi, in between two trees and was already lying down when Misty called out to him about dinner. Right, dinner, they can't forget about that one. Tonight's menu is roasted snake and herb soup. It smells a bit funky, but the meal was still delicious. While eating, Misty told Soujirou that he would make a wonderful adventurer given their many accomplishments in the past few days. Soujirou wasn't too keen on the idea, especially since he just wants to live a peaceful and quiet life. Besides, all of that was only possible because of the goddess's blessings. The following morning, they resumed their journey, but not before Misty said that they should be seeing a trail soon that leads to the village. It's now the 3rd day since they left their base. Soujirou finds that the air in the forest seems to have shifted, and it's because the area they're walking over now is much closer to an average forest. Be that as it may, the magical energy there is still quite dense. So many magical creatures live in the area, much to the humans' struggle. Usually, Misty and the humans would employ the help of soldiers to clear the areas of any unwanted monsters, which pretty much ends up in battle most of the time. Some of the creatures may be small, but since they have magic, they're quite troublesome to handle. This prompted Soujirou to ask a question. If they're magical beasts, does that mean they also have magical stones? Misty replied that only bigger and stronger creatures have magic stones. Plus, they usually need a brigade or a large number of soldiers to take one mighty magical creature down. Because of the danger, the salary for such a job is pretty high. After a beat, they reached the trail leading to the human village called Brown Wolves. The guards at the gate were surprised to see Misty, It was evident they didn't expect the elven noble, and even more so that she brought company with her. Misty briefly introduced Soujirou as her companion, so the guard didn't ask for much except the toll tax. Soujirou readily paid the man, and as they crossed the gate he looked back and noticed the guard smirking at him. What was that? Now we move on to Brownwolf's town. This small village offers a variety of products that they sourced from the Divine Tree Forest. As they walked around, Soujirou noticed that it's a pretty peaceful place, while Misty shared that she's pretty much a local because of how she's been visiting Brownwolves for the last 2 decades. Speaking of familiar, she remembers the gate guard back when he was just a kid, and now he's already a grown adult. It may not look it, but Misty looks much older than many, but what disturbs him the most is the look the guard showed him earlier. Well, no use mulling over that because they have now reached Misty's usual trading house. They hadn't even been standing long outside when a burly man came out stomping and fuming, rambling about the store owner. That's when he finally noticed Soujirou. The man leaned closer, surprised to see an unfamiliar face. He asked Soujirou if he had any business with the store. Before he could answer, Misty chimed in and asked the man if he had just gotten into another fight. Seeing her made the mad do a double take between Soujirou and Misty. Was he with her? That was more than enough pleasantries for the man, so he hurriedly ran off after giving Soujirou a few pats. Right then, an older and thin man emerged from the store, apologizing for his noisy guest's behavior. He turns to Misty, commenting on how she visited way earlier than her usual schedule. In reply, Misty told him that some things had happened, which is why they ended up where they are now. When the older man noticed Soujirou, he had the same reaction as the burly man. He couldn't believe an elf brought a man along with her. It's unheard of in the last 20 years. The older man was quick to regain his composure, introducing himself as Doraro, the head of the trade association. After their introductions, Doraro leaned closer to Soujirou, asking him what his relationship with Misty was. Depending on his answer, he might even give Soujirou special treatment, you know? Misty called him out, so now the older man grumpily invited them inside his establishment to see what they had to offer. They may have started with a tense situation, but Soujirou was happy enough by the end of their transaction. The majority of the talking was done by Misty, so he's just happy he got what he came in for, including seasonings and a lot of cookware. He was still relishing in his new items when the burly man from before suddenly appeared on his side. The latter introduced himself as Sidek and asked how their transaction with Doraro went. Soujirou was more than happy to entertain him. But Sedek was more curious about some other thing. Was Soujirou living in the Divine Forest? Soujirou said so, which made Sidek even more curious. You see, the Divine Forest is pretty much untouchable, so how was Soujirou living there? The trees are too tough to cut down and the place is swarming with monsters to boot. Without missing a beat, Soujirou simply told him that he lives normally, as if that answered all of Sidek's questions. Sidek also knows Soujirou's not a charcoal seller from appearance alone, so the latter explains that he sells materials from magic stones and magic beasts. From this, Sidek deduced that Soujirou was an adventurer, thus warning him that the most dangerous magician had just arrived in the area. This magician's appearance caused an uproar in their small town, especially when they heard the magician was headed to the Divine Forest. Since Soujirou said he lived there, Sidek just wanted to give a little warning to the guy. If he ever came across a problem, Soujirou should just head straight to the guild. Finally, the older man had one final question for Soujirou. What does he plan to do in the Divine Forest? With a smile, Soujirou said he just wants to cook and eat delicious food. The latter seemed pleased with his answer, and as if on cue, Misty appeared and called out to Soujirou. When the latter turned, Sidek was nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, back at Doraro's building, the older man has his brows knitted together in worry. He was mumbling about how the line separating the mundane world is progressing pretty quickly, given how Misty returned soon with a human company. Just then, Sedek came busting through the door, asking the older man why he wanted his advice. Doraro side-eyed Sidek as he revealed that the latter is actually the town's viscount. Sidek only beamed. He seemed to relish the fact that Doraro sought his counsel. As much as he's reluctant to do so, Doraro had no other choice because it involved what the elven noble entrusted to him earlier. Apparently, Misty had entrusted him with the gall of the Great Serpent of the Forest. It's a large and high-quality magic stone that won't sell easily. This item is also believed to be a cure for all kinds of poison, which makes it valuable. The Great Serpent is a creature you can't kill easily. Many night expeditions have tried and failed. There's also Doraro's concern that he needs to set a price for the gall that matches its worth, or else it won't be profitable. This puts Doraro in a bind, leaving him frustrated that for a valuable material like the gall of the Great Serpent, Soujirou only wanted sugar, cookware, and other seasonings. The math doesn't add up, and if we look at it simply, Doraro is indebted to Soujirou, which frustrates the older man. For someone as old as him, Doraro couldn't believe he would be indebted to someone, and Misty even held him accountable for it for the next 100 years. As for Sidek, he's more impressed that Soujirou managed to build a connection with Misty and force the village merchant to be indebted to them. The sudden appearance of Misty and the increase in things to buy and sell made Dotaro wonder if the two were finding ways to develop the divine forest. Sidek's not too sure, but he's concerned that the two were able to bring such a large magic stone. This could also be a telling sign that Misty and Soujirou are pretty powerful, even though the latter doesn't look like it. He's still bothered by the fact that Soujirou told him how he cut trees in the divine forest like any normal person, as if anything's normal in that forest. On another note, there was also the arrival of the magician the other day. From what Doraro heard, the magician has the power to swallow more than a ship's cargo. The arrival of Iono of the Black Sea in their area just made Sidek wonder what the magician plans to do. Well, they'll cross that bridge when they get there, but for now, Doraro asks Sidek for help in doing the inventory for the items Misty and Soujirou bought. Meanwhile, Misty and Soujirou are carefree as ever, not knowing they're stressing Doraro terribly. Right now, Misty's concern is acquiring the rock salt so Soujirou can head home earlier. The latter feels bad for not being able to accompany Misty, but what can he do? His load is already overloaded, which is why they agreed that he and Musubi would head back first. As they went their separate ways, Soujirou told Musubi that they needed to stop somewhere else, asking the Silkimos to guide him to the location. Unknown to them, Iono of the Black Sea had just arrived at Soujirou's previous shelter with a sinister smile plastered on her face. But back to Soujirou, he wanted to return to his previous shelter because of the craft gear's power. Since the shelter contains craft gear's power, there's a chance that it will remain there forever, unless he dismantles it. Leaving an item with such immense power could be dangerous, which is why he's set on going back to take the shelter apart. After traveling for 2 days, Soujirou and Musubi eventually reached the first shelter and found it still intact. Although he only spent a day in it, Soujirou felt an attachment to the place. He was about to start dismantling it when he realized the inside of the lean-to shelter was unbelievably dark, like staring at the abyss. Before the abyss could stare back at him, Musubi quickly pulled Soujirou away from it, sensing the imminent danger inside. But not a moment later, Soujirou felt a presence from behind him and saw a large, huffing demon bear. The latter lunged towards Soujirou, so he had already changed craft gear into a mallet, getting ready to strike it down. But before the beast and Soujirou could come into contact, a foreign voice echoed just as a pale hand emerged from the darkness of his shelter. Suddenly, giant tentacles engulfed the monster bear just as Iono of the Black Sea finally showed herself. But her aura got ruined when Soujirou smacked the bear and tore it, along with the dark tentacles, into smithereens like Saitama's iconic one-punch kill. He felt a little bad for creating a mess just as the bear's severed head plopped to the ground. That's when Soujirou noticed a dainty thing hanging from the beast's mouth, a pair of panties. But wait, didn't someone emerge from the dark shelter just a minute ago? In a shaking voice, Iono called out that there's no one there, which just gave her away. Musubi went ahead and used her silk in the direction of Iono's voice. The latter cried out in disgust just as the silky moss dragged her out of the shelter, pulling Iono upside down. Soujirou was more caught up with the fact that she's wearing a Japanese student's regular sailor uniform, shocked as to why someone like her is in this world. That, and he also finally knew who the owner of those torn panties was. The girl was shaken to the core by what happened, while Soujirou apologized for Musubi's rudeness. He tried to reach out to her by introducing himself, but Ione only retreated further inside the tent. After a beat or two, she finally introduced herself as Ichino Chigusa, with the two of them out battling their apologies afterward. She felt so embarrassed showing Soujirou that side of her that she wanted to jump in front of a speeding train. A thought Soujirou immediately cut off. But wait, she knows trains? Come to think of it, her name and even her attire don't seem to fit into this world. Chigusa explains that she's Japanese and pretty anxious about a lot of stuff, so Soujirou should just go ahead and call her casually. She was already a panicking mess, so it took a while for Soujirou to calm her down. When she did, he finally shared that he's also Japanese and considered different in their world. That was enough for Chigusa to come out of her shell, sharing that even though she looked like that, she's been living in their world for a while now, 4 years to be exact. Chigusa explains that people like them, otherworlders, are extremely rare. She may be sporting a Japanese uniform, but Chigusa's not even sure if she graduated. Besides, in this world, aging is pretty slow, so even if she looks like a kid, she's a bit older than she looks. Now that she has gotten more confident, Chigusa continues to share how she can also use cheat-level magic as a D-rank adventurer. But Soujirou is more curious about how she ended up inside the shelter he built. Hearing him say that aloud just made Chigusa pull back further. So this older brother is really the one who made this impenetrable tent. Chigusa revealed that the reason she was in his shelter was that she didn't expect the Divine Tree Forest to be full of such powerful monsters. What's even worse is that her power, dark magic, doesn't mix well with the forest or its inhabitants at all. Suddenly, she started vibrating at the speed of light as the dam finally broke. Chigusa broke down, relating how a lot of things had happened these last 4 years. For one, she couldn't believe a gloomy person like her would become popular in another world with the help of magic. As a result, she spent the last few years running around doing errands, but she got caught up in court politics, which was a pretty complicated topic. She went on rambling about everything that happened, so Soujirou had to cut her off to calm her down. To sum it up, Chigusa ran away from the demon bear once she entered the divine tree forest and hid in Soujirou's shelter. She was just trying to wash her underwear, but who would have thought the demon bear was a pretty aggressive haposai? Enough about Chigusa, isn't Soujirou's weapon too powerful? After all, it took down the bear and Chigusa's tentacles in just one hit. At that, Soujirou explained that it's actually a divine tool that helped him create the shelter. A far cry from Chigusa's cheat ability, dark magic high affinity. Since she can't do what Soujirou does, Chigusa has decided to attach herself to his shelter, saying she'll make it her second home. That's when Soujirou stepped in, saying he actually went there to dismantle the shelter. Upon hearing that, Chigusa threw a semi-fit, semi-panic since the shelter itself is pretty powerful. According to Chigusa, the shelter ate a demon beast, and as for her, she can't exactly go home. To make matters worse, her food supply is running out, so she thinks she'll be a goner sooner rather than later. Soujirou could only facepalm at this kid. Food running out is one thing, but it would be hard for her if dehydration started. In fact, it could even kill her. He can't exactly leave her out here, so in the end, he asked Chigusa if she would like to live with them at their campsite. It was a no-brainer. Chigusa agreed instantly, of course. Once Soujirou dismantled the shelter, they made their way back to the campsite. On the way back, Soujirou asked more about Chigusa, like her skills and title. She quickly obliged, explaining that the title Chigusa ni Nantoka is derived from the technique Chigusa Shadow Manipulation Spell. In their world, it's pretty common to abbreviate things. For her, dark magic can do a lot, but Soujirou remained quiet. After all, he remembered Sidek saying the most dangerous magician in the world is among them, but he never expected her to be a crying and anxious mess. Screw that, Chigusa's barely breathing with the amount of walking they've done. In the end, Musubi had to carry her all the way to the campsite. Once they reached the area, Matsukaze welcomed Soujirou with lots of kisses. He thanked Ukitama for keeping watch of their base as the latter clung to Soujirou's leg. Seeing the two cute and fluffy creatures instantly brightened the gloomy Chigusa. Soujirou introduced her to his fluffy companions, but Matsukaze got too excited and smacked her so hard that she ended up on the ground. To say that Chigusa was shocked to see two structures at the campsite was an understatement. The girl nearly had her eyes popping and her jaw on the floor, seeing that there was actual proof of human settlement there, in the middle of the divine tree forest. If possible, she turned to Soujirou and looked at him more incredulously than before, saying that only gods can use the magical trees and push through the beasts in the forests. But Soujirou points out that Chigusa is also knowledgeable about other worlds, which made her blush a little. But from the looks of it, the girl had it rough, seeing how excited she is from seeing a dining table set like it's the pinnacle of human civilization. Soujirou was about to make tea, briefly explaining how the beverage was done via mixing and boiling some herbs in the area, when Chigusa's mouth hung open once again at the mention of a toilet. She's so happy with that alone, but Soujirou informed her that they have no toilet paper, hence the use of leaves instead. That's when Chigusa told him that she had that. The way she switched up from being bubbly to sullen happened so fast. Suddenly, a dark portal opened as Chigusa conjured paper from the shadows. She hands it to Soujirou, explaining there are a lot of things they can store in the shadows, but it's not much use here. After all, if she hid any expensive pieces of jewelry inside, she'd be suspected of smuggling, which in turn can lead to her magic being appraised. She learned the hard way from experience, losing pretty much everything she had after a lord of a certain town accused her of such. When it comes to buying food, they also have to apply through the guild since it regulates everything. With the way the system is set up, the only way to get your stuff is through bribery, something many adventurers have adapted to. Even Soujirou knows the game, but he just kept his mouth shut. Chigusa continued saying that having connections is crucial in their world, but no one even taught her about it. Seeing she's already murking, Soujirou decided to lighten up the mood by sharing that an elf lives with him, and that this elf will be back in 3 days. Since this elf is a woman, he thinks Chigusa would feel more at ease and even guides Chigusa to the village. That's when the dam finally broke free. Chigusa started bawling her eyes out, saying she didn't want to return to the village or work anymore. Instead of judging her, Soujirou sympathized with Chigusa, knowing he was also a workaholic and had no one to turn to. It's a grim reminder of how he was never rewarded despite working hard and receiving unreasonable treatment. But looking at Chigusa now, Soujirou realized that she's been going through the same things he did at a much younger age, which amplified his pity for her. With tears in her eyes, she continues about how it's getting harder to eat lately because of how bad the food tastes. With that, Soujirou finally told her that she can just stay with them. He'll even build a house for her. In exchange, she could just help him out with some other kinds of stuff, especially about their world. Is he for real? Would he really be okay with that? Especially since Chigusa can't really think of anything useful? Does Soujirou want her to become his stool or something? Chigusa really thought he'd use her for furniture, so Soujirou had to clarify that what he wanted to utilize was her magic. After all, her tentacles were able to stop the demon bear, not to mention being able to store items in the shadows is a handy skill and something he couldn't do. Those two praises alone were enough to lift her spirits up, but back to the point. Since he can't use magic, Soujirou wants her to stay and help around their campsite, on top of helping him in learning more about the magic in this world. Once that was settled, they started to eat Soujirou's home-cooked meal and talked about the other resident of the campsite. Chigusa said that if this elven woman is as bright as the sun, then she might have to stay in the dark. Soujirou found that peculiar, but if anything, he hopes Misty's return can help both of them learn about other important things in this world. But anyway, Soujirou asked Chigusa if she could help him out with some things after their meal, which she was more than happy to do. While Soujirou created a new pot, Chigusa was in charge of fetching the herbs for their dinner. For dinner, Soujirou cooked the fish they caught in the river with herbs and wild greens, making it savory and flavorful. At the first whiff of the dish, Chigusa almost cried again because it was the first time she had had a proper meal in 4 years. She shared stories about the world, which got Soujirou a little shocked given how the palace doesn't even have dishes of the same caliber as his cooking. According to her, fruits were the only tasty ones, gobbling up Soujirou's home-cooked meal as she said so. She asked for seconds, and the latter was more than happy to feed her more. After they've eaten, Soujirou showed Chigusa the tent she made for him. It was a rushed job, so it's pretty simple, but the latte didn't mind. According to her, the shelter he made before was comfortable enough, so the tent along with the blankets is more than enough for her. Soujirou couldn't help but ask how she managed to sleep all this time. Since heat comes from above and the cold comes from the ground, she had to have some kind of insulation, right? Chigusa just used her dark magic and wrapping herself in darkness while nestled inside her blankets, which is kinda pathetic. Soujirou pitied the girl, but at least she has a better sleeping place now. Before he went to his hut, he added that the area is warded against monsters so she can sleep soundly tonight. Before he walked off, Chigusa thanked him again, a sentiment Soujirou echoed because she thought him more about this world. And as embarrassing as it is, she had to ask what his name was, panicking because she didn't catch it the first time. Soujirou told her his name and told her to drop the honorifics. It's been a long time since she talked this much, which had her throat hurting, and that's how Soujirou found himself a third resident in his campsite. The next morning, Soujirou woke up thanks to Matsukaze's lick-tongue attacks. She wished Misty a good morning upon instinct, and remembered that his elven friend hadn't returned yet. Now that he realized it, the place seemed lonelier without her there, but Soujirou decided to brush it off to wash his face. That's when he heard a panicked scream from Chigusa's tent, telling Soujirou she's awake and apologizing for sleeping in despite being a low-ranking member. Like Soujirou, Chigusa woke up all wet and sticky because of Matsukaze's attack. She was so distressed that she forgot what it was like to greet another person with a good morning. Seeing Soujirou stretching, she asks if he's doing the radio exercises popular back then, so the former invites her to do a light stretching session with him. After doing so, Soujirou suggested they go for a little swim, but not before asking Chigusa if she had any spare clothes. Musubi was nice enough to fix her uniform last night, but if it wasn't too much to ask, poor Chigusa shyly asked if she could also have a pair of panties made for her since Demon Bear Happosai took them yesterday. The two of them headed to the river, where Soujirou handed Chigusa a makeshift soap made from the griffin's hook claws. He explained that it has cleansing properties and pointed Chigusa to a certain area where she could wash freely. But no sooner had she taken her clothes off, the girl crashed out, wondering if she could wash freely in her birthday suit with Soujirou just a few meters away. While she was panicking, Soujirou stood still in his position, thinking that Chigusa really had to take a bath. She was giving off BO, but he couldn't exactly tell that to her face. Plus, Chigusa should make herself more presentable when she meets Misty later on. After bathing, Soujirou took it upon himself to brush her hair. Chigusa thought he was being considerate, but in reality, Soujirou just really wanted to check if she had any lice, or worse, fleas. He was hell-bent on making a good impression for Misty, hoping she would take Chigusa in without issue. Speaking of clean, even Chigusa was surprised that Soujirou doesn't smell like an old man. In his defense, he just wants to keep a nice living space for everyone, aside from being hygienic, of course. Now for today's agenda, Soujirou wants to build a cabin, which means he needs wooden logs for it. Since there are 3 of them now, he plans to make a bigger cabin where all 3 of them can live together, while the other houses will serve as the shed. While he was busy mulling over what to do, Chigusa approached him and offered to help out. But can she handle manual labor? No problem. Although she's mainly a dark magic user, there are also a couple of helpful things she can do, like make objects float. With that, she starts making the logs float while Soujirou works on them, shaving, cutting, and making them ideal building materials. He also has Chigusa store the finished logs in the shadow space. His work is already cut out thanks to craft gear, while the transportation time got shorter thanks to Chigusa's dark magic. They took a short break just when they were about to assemble the cabin because poor Chigusa couldn't keep up. Although she can make the objects lighter, she still needs to exert effort and push them in certain directions, and Chigusa exerted more today than in the last 4 years. They resumed work soon after, and although Chigusa managed to hand him a piece of lumber, it was evident that the poor girl was exhausted. At that, Soujirou asked if it would be easier for her if she used the dark tentacles instead. Lo and behold, it worked. Assembling the cabin from the frameworks to the wall panels, roof, and exterior walls went by like a breeze. Because Chigusa has a good grasp of the tentacles, assembling the cabin made it so much easier for them. And before long, they finally finished building the cabin. She was so happy seeing the cabin done, looking at Soujirou with so much respect and calling him a magician, but the latter said it was all thanks to her. Soujirou thanked her much to her surprise, saying that if she wasn't there, then they wouldn't be able to build the cabin at all. Now that they're done, chow time. Their menu for tonight was bear stew, the same Haposai demon bear that Soujirou smacked last chapter. Since they were too busy working on the cabin, they weren't able to hunt, which left them with bear meat for dinner. Sojirou's mind kept wandering back to Misty, since he knows she'll be back by tomorrow morning. Looking at Chigusa right now, he thought he needed to explain to Misty their whole situation, though in his heart, he hoped that his elven friend would accept Chigusa without any issues, or so he thought. Soujirou was far too optimistic the next day. He didn't expect Misty to draw her blades against a frightened Chigusa. The next morning, Chigusa tries her hand at fishing using her dark tentacles. She managed to catch one, hurling it high in the air only to smack the poor creature. Soujirou watched from the side, asking why she won't catch it by the hand. It was simple, it was gross, and there's no way Chigusa is touching that with her bare hands. Well, if that were the case, why try fishing in the first place, right? For one, Chigusa wanted to be useful today, so she thought she could contribute by doing the fishing. She managed to levitate the fish in midair and was about to grill it using her dark tentacles by casting it straight into the fire. Soujirou almost lost it right then, so it was a good thing Chigusa managed to snag the fish back thanks to her dark tentacles. Soujirou suggests she remove the fish's innards first to make them tastier. She had just started to do so when something struck the ground a few inches away from where Chigusa stood. Both of them froze as a voice issued a warning against Chigusa, ordering her to stop using her dark magic. It was Misty. Misty was on guard, blades drawn and eyes narrowed. She asked Soujirou if he was still of sound mind right now. She already has a barrage of questions, asking how long they were together and if he wasn't affected by dark magic. He finally stepped in, telling Misty that she got it all wrong. There was a pregnant pause before Misty looked a little sad, asking if he had been enticed by the dark magic user while he was away. With a smile, he promised he was okay, adding that Chigusa wasn't dangerous at all. Misty didn't say anything. Instead, she walked up to him and leaned her face close to his. After deducing that he was the same Soujirou from before, she finally put her guard down. As if on cue, Chigusa cried out in disgust as she held the fish in her bare hands. Misty didn't expect the former to be like this. In fact, this dark magic user is quite different from the others. There's a good reason why Misty is acting very cautious around Chigusa. You see, in their world, dark magic users' powers are rooted in faith. Their lot is pretty steadfast on inhuman beliefs like causing chaos or hurting people. Moreover, dark magic users have souls that have accumulated hidden darkness that led them to what they are, also giving them power and mental strength. When she puts it like that, Soujirou deduces that it's like believing in invisible gods from the depths of your heart. To help clear Chigusa, Soujirou explained to Misty that their new friend believes in something different, like the weekly shonen magazine. This concept may sound foreign to Misty since it's a cultural difference thingy, but she didn't probe any further. But more importantly, he finally greeted Misty with a welcome back after being separated for a few days. It was a little awkward though, but the two just laughed it off, while Chigusa was on the side, crashing out with the fish in her hand. Misty's whole demeanor made a 180-degree turn once she knew Chigusa came from the same place as Soujirou. Now she's more welcoming toward Chigusa, with the latter too blinded by Misty's aura. Soujirou also took the time to show the new cabin to Misty, with the latter even more impressed since the cabin is better made than their previous hut. She complimented the wooden panels, which helped with the cabin's insulation. He also made a bed and table that can be folded when not in use, making the room more spacious. But what's even more curious is that both Chigusa and Soujirou kept taking their shoes off when they were inside the cabin. The Japanese blood jumped out, as Soujirou explained that they did it out of habit. Misty decided to follow suit, so she took off her shoes as well, since she didn't want to feel left out. Well, he's still not finished with the entrance since there's still the threefold earth to build in the entrance hall. Outside, they also checked out the roof, which is pretty high up and wonderfully built. Chigusa explained that she helped set the timber with her dark tentacles. the two conversing comfortably to Soujirou's surprise. Although he had her help with the construction, seeing her talk animatedly like this suggests that she also enjoyed making it. Later, Misty found Soujirou doing something curious, holding a basin with some kind of liquid in it. He explained that Chigusa gave him olive oil which they can use for cooking. He was excited to cook some local dishes from his hometown. So is Soujirou reserving this special dish for her? Obviously he was, which made Misty even more excited for it. But then again, why did Chigusa have so much oil in the first place? She had it in stock since she didn't have anything to cook. If they cooked the fish in oil, then it would become even tastier. Soujirou will be making potato starch by grinding the plants and wrapping them in cloth. He then repeatedly squeezed the cloth while in water, with the sediments making the water cloudy. Once it settles, he disregards the water and repeats this process. The remaining powder left at the bottom will become the potato starch. This potato starch will be used for this special meat that Soujirou has been marinating and saving. He sprinkles the potato starch on the deep-fried meat to create Tetsuda age. Both Misty and Chigusa beamed, it was so delicious. Chigusa even cried joyfully, eating carriage for the first time in years. Thanks to the potato starch, it produced a crispy coating when fried, with a juicy meat bursting with flavor inside. A real Food Wars moment. Soujirou suddenly remembered something, fiddling with his craft gear. A moment later, he handed Chigusa skewers on a stick. She gave a yelp, her eyes twinkling at the sight of courage on a stick. Of course, he gave Misty one too, and the two of them enjoyed eating together, something he didn't expect but hoped to see. The next day, both ladies took a bath together. Soujirou remembered how Chigusa refused to submerge her head in water, which led to Soujirou creating a bucket. Now the two ladies enjoy bathing together using Soujirou's newest craftsmanship. Soujirou's harem life is about to get really good, with both ladies wrapped in a single piece of cloth. So how do you make a bucket? Soujirou patiently explained to Chigusa the process of creating the bucket. He started with the side plates by cutting the board into 10 pieces and assembling them into a decagon, but you have to place them at a certain angle so they can be joined in the middle. From there, he cut a trapezoidal-shaped plank with the bottom part narrower before proceeding to shave it into a curved surface. He puts all of these together and uses a string to secure them in place. He cuts the top and bottom portions before smoothing the inside and outside. Next, he digs a groove on the inside and inserts the bottom plate that's cut to shape the groove. They finally have a bucket. As the final part of the process, Soujirou filed the plane to smooth it and wrapped it in a bark band before tightening it. They checked to see if there were any leaks, and when there weren't, Chigusa and Misty used it for bathing. Watching the two ladies bathing before him using an item he built left him feeling fulfilled. For Soujirou, one of the best feelings in the world is creating something useful for someone who's in trouble. He decided that he'll start building tools based on their needs, but his thought process got cut off when Chigusa mentioned how the cloth isn't thick enough. It's practically see-through. Unlike her, Misty finds the cloth refreshing. It's lightweight and smooth on the skin, all thanks to Musubi's handiwork. With the way the cloth hung on Misty's body, even Chigusa was left frozen and admiring the elven woman's physique. But more importantly, Misty called her out since Chigusa is positioned in the deeper part of the river. That's because she was trying to catch some of the fish swimming nearby. She could even catch some of these guys, relying on her dark tentacles to catch the unsuspecting fish. Misty warns her not to disturb the water too much and cause a commotion since she could attract monsters. Chigusa was just about to assure her that everything's fine when it's clearly not. The girl completely submerged into the water. Misty called out to Soujirou for help. They managed to save Chigusa just in time, but she was pretty out of it. Misty suspects that it must be one of those slime monsters, since their type is drawn to dark magic. Thanks to this incident, Soujirou's list of worries grows. This also just means that exercising caution is a must, even when bathing. Misty, on the other hand, thinks that they shouldn't get too excited since the slimes don't normally attack unless provoked. Chigusa managed to regain consciousness by now, just as Soujirou spotted something shiny not far from where they were. It's a glass bead. Well, not quite, since what Soujirou is holding is actually the cell of an evil smile. The cell is separated from the nucleus and gathers to form a sphere. Because of its smooth texture, some people buy it, which is also a pretty easy way for beginner adventurers to earn money. Misty explains further that if the glass beads didn't have a nucleus, then they would be pretty harmless. But if there are, then the possibility of them gathering and creating a large body could spell trouble since slimes stick together. Fighting an individual slime is okay, but fighting a colony is pretty troublesome. The only way to defeat them is to crush the nuclei. Just then, someone smashes the glass beads with a rock, and of course, it's Chigusa. The poor girl was traumatized, smashing them before they could join together. That's when Soujirou noticed that they become smaller orbs once the nucleus is crushed, which he decided to keep. This world sure is filled with interesting materials and creatures. Misty, on the other hand, bans Chigusa from using dark magic while they're bathing in the river. Just then, Ukatama appeared in front of them, and a second Ukatama appeared. It's like the divine beast became a slime. Misty got all giddy upon knowing that it's Ukatama's child. Although they look identical, Soujirou can identify which is Ukatama and the other one is Kotama. To make differentiating them easier, Misty decided to put a ribbon on the other right before she went hunting with Matsukaze. Chigusa low-key commented on Misty's girl hobby of putting a ribbon, which the latter took offense to. Suddenly, Misty became a blabbering mess, explaining why tying a ribbon is a good idea for them to differentiate the two Ukatamas. Suddenly, both ladies are over-explaining themselves to each other, so in the end, Misty caved in and admitted her embarrassing hobby of putting ribbons. She just hopes Chigusa keeps it a secret from Soujirou, but too late, he already heard it all. Well, he overheard everything because he decided to intervene in case Chigusa and Misty fought. Besides, Soujirou already knew about the ribbon from before, and yes, he also finds it endearing. Being the good guy that he is, Soujirou assures Misty that it's okay to like the things she likes. If anything, he thinks liking cute stuff suits Misty a lot. Hearing him say that made Misty go beet red. To mask her feelings of embarrassment, she smacks Soujirou's shoulder like every shy maiden in shoujo manga. She tells off Soujirou, reminding him that he's a divine being, so flirting with others is a no-no. Misty then runs off with Matsukaze for their daily hunting, while Soujirou is left clueless and massaging his shoulder. Now where is Chigusa? The sullen girl ran off to the woods, thinking she had failed both Soujirou and Misty, so she took it upon herself to gather some wild herbs as an apology for them, hoping it's enough to not get her kicked out of the campsite. Chigusa waltzed in just as Soujirou was talking aloud about his upcoming projects, like an outdoor barbecue area, wishing for concrete so they have a stronger building material. Chigusa cut in and handed Soujirou the herbs with her head down, asking not to be exiled. Of course she won't be. Sojirou's mind was thinking of miwatsushi, the flooring used for the entrance of Japanese homes. Chigusa's more surprised that he could make a building material like that. Soujirou notes that he got most of the materials down save for slaked lime and eggshells. She suggested they check out bird nests, but what will they do about the egg's contents? Do they eat it? Soujirou thinks it's best to just break them since the insides could be a yolk or maybe half-hatched, leaving Chigusa grossed out again. It took a while to get her to calm down, and he decided that they'll just cross that bridge when they get there. His priority right now is to maintain the image of their outdoor area and make sure that they're protected from the natural elements. Chigusa couldn't help but hear him talk about their campsite with such consideration made her comment on how Soujirou is so passionate about these kinds of things. To be frank, Soujirou told her that presentation and looking good are important, especially when it involves eating. If one stops caring about these details, then it's like eating crap, which is a pretty exaggerated take. Plus, Chigusa would be happier in a better surrounding, right? He's right, but Chigusa's more interested in that smaller house he erected over there. Soujirou said he created the small hut to enshrine a deity, though he hasn't performed a groundbreaking ceremony yet. He wanted to create a small shrine for the deity, and even took great efforts to practice making a roof. The more he thought about it, the more the structure started to resemble a small house. Ultimately, Soujirou gave up midway, but at least he had a cute-looking birdhouse. Plus, it was good practice for his part. Misty suddenly appeared, curious as to what the two were talking about when she laid her eyes on the small house. Chigusa filled her in, saying Soujirou used it as practice for when he needs to make a real house eventually. Misty got all excited, asking where her room or Chigusa's room was. This left the latter flustered because Chigusa's okay with living in the attic or something. Matsukaze appeared suddenly and barked at Misty, reminding her why she was there in the first place. Now that she remembered it, Misty actually caught a big one and she needs help carrying it back. Soujirou suggests she take Chigusa while he prepares their haul for dissection. With that, the two ladies left while Soujirou got ready to prepare dinner. Suddenly, a voice sounded welcoming Soujirou and calling him Legaria Master. He quickly looked around asking who it was when he noticed the door of the small cabin open. Then, out came the prettiest and daintiest creature Soujirou laid his eyes on, a fairy. A silver-haired fairy suddenly appears. She speaks and relays how the fairy realm lacks passion lately, and yet here she is who has found a small property brimming with energy. In all seriousness, she turns to Soujirou and informs him that this house will go to a capable fairy. In return, a talented fairy shall help Soujirou, and she even called him master. Mistia is just as shocked to see a fairy, asking the little figure when the last time she appeared before people was, "When was the last time you appeared before people?" Swift wings silence their sound. The fairy replies, "Girl, what?" Mistia only smiles and tells Soujirou that this capable fairy might be extraordinary, but the latter could see through her words. "You don't understand, do you?" was his reply to Mistia. At least she openly admits that she doesn't understand at all. It's their first meeting and the gap is already this big? This may spell trouble for Soujirou? For Mystia, she thinks taking fairies seriously is pretty troublesome, so she suggests Soujirou should just ignore them instead. On the upside, she tells him that fairies are not evil, and didn't that one over there say she'll help with the handiwork? Soujirou has no comment about that. But if fairies are not evil, then sure, she could use the house. The fairy in question quickly flies over him and thanks her master, but our MC is more curious to know what her name is. The capable fairy is called Cynaria. That is what I go by, she tells him. Just then Chigusa comes waltzing by, calling out to Soujirou. She asks him where she should put the meat they dismantled earlier, when she suddenly locks eyes with a fairy. Before anyone realizes what happened, Cynaria suddenly dropkicks Chigusa in the face, just as the latter mutters, "A tiny gentleman." Why did it suddenly become the WWE? Chigusa falls face first on the ground, but Cynaria shows no remorse. For one, she didn't expect that the darkness minion would be where the regalia is, so it's up to her, the capable fairy, to take care of the threat. Soujirou steps in between them, protecting Chigusa as he tells the fairy that the latter is not dangerous. Pitiful. Yes. Look. As if to prove his point, he holds Chigusa up like a child, with the latter crying her eyes out. "I'm sorry, tiny lady," Chigusa begins, "but when you say small humanoid, doesn't that usually mean that kind of thing?" Cynaria ignores her and asks Soujirou if he's okay instead. "Have you been having nightmares?" But Soujirou says he's not. Mystia joins the conversation and supports Sujirou's claim. He's not bothered by Chigusa's darkness if that's what the fairy is asking. Well, even Cynaria admits that this is something unimaginable even for once. With that said, she'll adjust her evaluation of her master upwards. Evaluation aside, what Soujirou wants is for the fairy to apologize to Chigusa. Just look at her, she's frightened. As the capable fairy, Cynaria will obey her master and apologize to the darkness's minion. But just one look at Chigusa's crying face is enough for the fairy to back up. "What's wrong?" Soujirou asks, "Are you afraid too, Cynaria?" The latter claims she's not scared because a capable fairy does not fear. Yeah, right, as if her trembling is not proof enough of that. Soujirou had to ask her to be friendly and get along with everyone, to which she said she would try, and yet after a while Chigusa started to hide behind Soujirou every time Cynaria was nearby. Even Mystia felt bad for poor Chigusa. So just like that, the Soujirou compound welcomes another new resident. The said resident in question is currently lying on the couch. Although functional, Cynaria finds the furniture lacking artistic flair, so she asks for a neoclassical design, which is a pretty oddly specific design, don't you think so? That day, Soujirou found out that Cynaria is a rather fussy type. She continues to share her input about how it would be good to furnish calming designs on the legs and edges, citing that with artistry that's how it usually is. Furthermore, she points out that he can't improve cushioning with just animal fur or fabric, which is why she recommends creating and installing an air mattress. Well, that's nice and all, but the thing is, Soujirou doesn't have any fabric that can block air. That's when Cynaria tells him that in the forest of divine trees there are trees where rubber sap can be harvested. After acquiring those, he should give them to Mas and Musubi, and by combining them with cloth, manufacturing becomes possible. Soujirou didn't know that. The fairy continues that the Shinju's forest is a creation from the age of the gods. It is home to a great many useful plants. As an excellent resource base, Cynaria says actively using it will help maintain balance within the land. Soujirou nods intently because the poor man only understands half of what she's saying. After explaining, she asks if he felt some sort of sexual excitement toward her. The exceptional fairy. Heck no. Soujirou feels a bit apprehensive at her question, but Cynaria finds it weird. Didn't she just show off her excellence? And she's pretty small too. To that, he points out that she's leaning in too much in her being small and excellent. Translation, aren't you too over yourself? At least Cynaria didn't hold on to his take and quickly moved on. Now she plans on collecting rubber and asks him for something sharp. Soujirou fashions a small dagger for her, but of course since she's so small it's practically the equivalent of Dragon Slayer for her. She swings it around, noting that it's quite the tool. Out of the blue, she tells him that he should also make a bed for himself. When Soujirou asks why, Cynaria only tells her that it will come in useful. With that, she flies away. What a strange being with peculiar behaviors this one is. Before she flies further, Soujirou shouts from behind to call him for help once she's done collecting the sap. Cynaria turns and tells him there's no need to worry about that. Suddenly, she zooms straight to Chigusa and picks her up, telling Soujirou that she's strong. Meanwhile, Chigusa is a bit stunned to discover that she's levitating. Man, even if Cynaria is small, she's not what she seems, huh? Suddenly, the fairy releases poor Chigusa, and fortunately, Soujirou was able to catch her. Perfect catch, the fairy says, but Chigusa is way too traumatized by this gremlin, holding on to Soujirou even tighter, that she almost folded herself over him. Fairies are scary, she says, trembling. On the other hand, Cynaria is asking if they should hurry with the bed's completion. But nope, not on Soujirou's watch, no hurry. The next day, Soujirou is in a good mood. You see, yesterday the fairy interrupted his work, but now he reworked the household altar into a temple style. It's the neoclassical design she wanted. There's a small figure of the mother goddess inside, and while Soujirou is busy admiring his work, Musubi and the fairy fly over him. The former settles on his head, prompting Soujirou to ask if his moth friend likes it. Meanwhile, Seineria comments that it needs a bit more color. As the capable fairy, she volunteers to decorate it with flowers and instructs Soujirou to make small flower pots. She reiterates that he needs to make them small, and after checking his work again, Soujirou agrees with her comment. Musubi conjures a magic circle out of the blue, prompting Soujirou to ask if his moth friend wants to help too. Musubi produced a cloth-like item and had it strewn across the small temple. Oh, so Musubi wants a decorative cloth, no? Soujirou got the hint and said he'll attach one. While he was busy working, the fairy couldn't help but ask what he prays to the goddess for. Well, so far a lot of Soujirou's wishes had been granted, so in all honesty he just wants to say thanks. After all, the wish he whispered while reincarnating has been steadily granted. Plus he has tools, hands to craft, and extra time. But wait, there's more. He also has unexpectedly pleasant neighbors, and they even help with hunting. Simply put, he doesn't really particularly want more than this for Soujirou. This is enough. To his annoyance, Seineria wishes for something perverted, and he has to tell her outright to stop wishing lewd things to the goddess. Seineria could only sigh because what would he know? He's on the side of granting wishes, after all. Huh? What does she mean by that? As far as Soujirou remembers, he did anything but such. Darkness wield is obvious enough. Seineria begins. Her wish is delicious food and a safe place. You've already provided that, she points out to him. Now that she put it that way, Soujirou agrees. Then, as for the ear-tipped maiden's girly hobby, meaning Mystia's doings, the fairy reveals that the humans and their allies find it troublesome, and yet Soujirou readily accepts it. Huh? Soujirou frowns as he asks what she means by that. According to her, Mystia's wish is for the Shinju's forest beasts and its spirit beasts to make use of them. Oh, now that she mentions it, Soujirou remembers Mystia said something along those lines before. But is that wish of hers really troublesome? Well, Seineria says it's because it depends on what Mystia wants it to be useful for. From what she knows, this forest can only be restored by the long-eared ones, but Mystia publicly declares she will never use it for conflict, and tries to ensure that even while the nations are at war, and right in the middle of those wars too. Wait, war? So does this mean in the middle of a war Mystia seeks peaceful use of resources? Seineria confirms that it is correct, and for those in power that's pretty frustrating. While people are busy killing each other, there's Mystia, who seeks to protect endangered species. Because of this, powerful people across regions rejected and abandoned her requests. With no one to support her, of course, this dream of hers is something she cannot do alone. Plus, there's also a chance that some may also pretend to keep their promises, but then again she's an elf. Seineria suggests he carve a vow-binding curse, which made Soujirou think about it for a bit. Well, what if Mystia promised not to use it for war? And what if there comes a time when she finds something even stronger but she can't use it? That would be a big problem. Soujirou knows that charcoal made from this forest can melt iron, and this in turn is a resource comparable to coke coal, which is a pretty high-value material. Still, he thinks those trees are not enough reason to make a vow. Seineria speaks again and tells him that he, the other worlder, is the only one who understands Mystia. So now she asks him what he plans to do with the forest from here on out. Didn't Sadek ask him that too before? Soujirou doesn't have any grand ambitions, and he hasn't even considered how to use Shinju's forest. But at least he knows what he doesn't want. Soujirou doesn't want food that tastes like nothing since he's already fed up with his past life. I want surplus to make delicious food and time to savor it, he tells Seineria. A place like that is what I want to cherish, that's how I want to live. Crafting things with thought, using his own hands, reminds him to remember to savor life. As he continued to stare at his own hands, a realization dawned upon him. He feels kinship with Mystia's goal, and he wants to support it. Seineria tilts her head quizzically. Kinship? Soujirou explains that it's an accumulation of meaningless things to those left uninterested, but she thinks it might help someone. Simply put, it means being valued. It's making someone happy. It makes him think that what you do becomes useful to someone and stays in their memory. Maybe even beyond that. When what you cherish is cherished by someone too, you'd understand that feeling, he tells the fairy. Since I understand it, I can support Mystia's goal. Now that he thinks about it, Mystia is alone, with no one else believing her ideal. Just how many months did she spend in the depths of this forest? Seineria tells him that he is a rare holder of heart in this world, but she quickly changes the topic and diverts it back to the flower pots. Isn't he done making them yet? Furthermore, she orders him to bring the cloth without speaking. This pissed him off a bit because he's just doing it because he likes it. She shouldn't go around talking like an ex-boss. And yet the next day, the little shrine has little flowers among its ornaments and is now richly colored. Master, the capable fairy cherishes the temple, she tells Soujirou with a pleased smile. He smiles in return and thanks her for the compliment. To live in nature, the Soujirou compound heavily relies on the river for water. However, it's dangerous to approach it when it rains, and the water stays murky for several days. Of course, they could build a rainwater tank to store water, but that would mean more effort in conservation and maintenance. Which brings us to our current predicament. Soujirou and Chigusa are together on this fine day. He informs her that since they have rubber now, they can make daily water collection easier and unaffected by rain. So for today they're going to dig a well. To do that he asks for Chigusa's help and she's more than happy to do so. But wait, a well? As in the one where Sadako emerges? Chigusa smiles and suggests they build it a bit farther away from her house. Soujirou notices her trembling and he knows what she's thinking, but this time what they're actually going to build is a hand pump well. Now let's make a hand pump. Soujirou says, then quickly adds that the one he saw is from a long time ago. At least he remembers how the mechanism works. A pump is basically the same structure as a syringe, right? So what they need to make it is a piston, the part that pushes, and a cylinder, the other part that fits into it. With that, they begin. First, they use the same method as the wooden bucket they made before. They create a long and narrow cylinder. Then they attach a bottom plate with a large hole in the center to the bottom of the cylinder, completing the cylinder. Now for the piston, Soujirou cuts and shaves wood into a cylinder, then smooths it out with a file. From there, they take softened leather and attach it to the side so it slightly sticks out at the top about 1/3 of the way up. Soujirou explains the mechanism to Chigusa, saying that when it moves up and down, the wrapped leather clings tightly to the cylinder wall and slides. Continuing with their work, Soujirou drills a hole in the center of the piston and makes a rubber disc that's large enough to fully cover the hole. Next, they take the copper plate they bought in town and shape it into a square. Bend one end slightly at an angle, fix the copper plate into the rubber disc and layer it so it covers the hole. The hole must be under the copper plate. Then they fix the part of the rubber disc that does not overlap with the copper. This way, when water comes down from below, the rubber opens, but when it comes from above, it closes like a lid, forming a valve. With that, the piston is finally complete. Now they attach a rod to connect the piston to a handle fitted into the cylinder, and the mechanism is practically done. Alright, now it's time to test their new machine. Soujirou pours water into the cylinder and checks for leaks. So far there are none from the sides or bottom. He pushes the piston, and it starts to pump water. Huh, that's not bad. Now they attach the remaining parts needed for the pump and temporarily fix a base to support the bottom plate. Finally, the driven hand pump is complete. Next is the valve base. Soujirou says as he grabs a board and a rubber, but Chigusa mistakes it and thinks he said ball base, like a cat's. Soujirou comes to the rescue, explaining that while fixing the bottom of the cylinder, they also need to make a second valve separate from the piston. With 2 valves they can draw water up and push it out of the top. So now for the valve base, they prepare a thick wooden board sized to match the pump and drill a round hole in the center. From there they add a slope to the edge of the hole and glue rubber along the slope to seal it. On the underside of the board they assemble a trapezoidal frame with sticks and fix it in place, then cut a stone into a truncated cone shape to fit the hole. Now they attach a straight wooden rod to its center, pass the rod through the hole in the board and glue a large disc-shaped stone to the other end, thus completing the valve base. Soujirou shows Chigusa how it works. The stone covers the hole, and the rod guides it to move straight up and down. Then the lower disc catches on the trapezoid so it won't rise too far and leave the hole. Suddenly, he goes quiet, prompting her to ask if there was something wrong. No, he answers. I didn't think I could do it, but I actually did it. In his mind, maybe the goddess's blessing is working. They celebrate their accomplishment by having a little break time. During this time, Chigusa asks if they are finally digging next, but he tells her that before that they need to make the lift pipe and casing pipe. From here on out, he tells her that he will need her help, which scares her, but she also promises to do her best. After their short break, it's back to work. Soujirou hands her a piece of wood of suitable thickness, which was fashioned into a long rod. They wrap a bark sheet around it, fix the bark sheet in place, then pull out the rod. The result now becomes the water pipe. Since the bark's time is fixed, it's strong enough not to collapse even if someone stands on it, and it won't rot even with water flowing through. Seeing how Soujirou made it, Chigusa is put in charge of creating the next few pieces. She hands him another one of the few she made, asking how many more they need. He tells her that they need about 4 since it's 4 meters deep. Yukitama did the honors of doing a geological survey beforehand and told him the position where they'll hit water. In Sojiru's mind, that's about the max depth for a hand pump well, so thank goodness for that. Huh? Are you drilling holes in the pipe? Chigusa asks as she sees what Soujirou is doing. Well, for the casing pipe that goes lower down, they drill small holes in the sides. The explanation for this is that it works when the groundwater enters through these holes, fills the inside, and the hand pump draws that water up. Soon enough, they finish making enough pipes. With that, Soujirou says it's time to start digging the well. First, they dig a shallow hole at the installation site to make the work easier. Using a digging shovel, they loosen the soil, then drill down about 1 meter. Next, they set the casing pipe in the hole and drive it in like a stake. For that, he calls Chigusa to do the honors. She casts her shadow manipulation spell, Octopus, with the dark tentacle doing the brunt of the work. While that's happening, Soujirou had to ask one thing. Does that chant actually do anything? She replies that it makes her stronger when she does it. He only smiles and doesn't comment about it, but in his mind, maybe that's how it works. Alright, I'll keep driving it in then, he says. While Chigusa's tentacles hold the pipe in place, he pulls out his trusty hammer and yells, "Craft gear!" then he instantly stops midway. Huh, he ended up chanting it too, didn't he? Chigusa beams because they're the same. Now he feels a bit bad for making a high school girl worry about him. Honestly speaking, when he clearly visualizes it and says it aloud, it feels like everything clicks into place. Plus, it also feels like the divine tool is responding to him somehow. Maybe this is what she meant, huh? He thought. Anyway, back to the pump. Soujirou hits the pipe, and after driving in the casing pipe, they insert the drill and start turning. Normally, you'd pull the drill out to remove the soil, then repeat the process again and again, but lucky for him, he has Chigusa to do all the hard work, specifically, her shadow manipulation spell, Whirlpool. Now the soil being dug up gets swallowed by her shadow, which speeds things up. Soujirou can't help but be impressed once he sees it. It's a big help. Even with craft gear, dealing with all the dirt and sand is a pain, he says. With that, he urges her to keep at it. Now they just keep adding pipe extensions on top and repeat the process. Later, when Soujirou hit the pipe, there was something different this time. He quickly puts his ear over the pipe, something Chigusa mirrors, as they hear water splashing from the inside. No, they insert the lift pipe in the casing. By the way, its tip has holes and is wrapped in a cloth filter to prevent sand from being sucked up. They pour water into it to fill it to the top for testing, and if the water gets drawn into the pipe, it means there's a water layer. Then they finally install the hand pump. Now for the moment of truth. First, they add priming water to create a vacuum inside the pump. Then Soujirou pushes the handle, and out comes the flowing water. They did it. He moves over and lets Chigusa have a try, and the latter enthusiastically pumps the lever, amazed at their work. Soujirou watches her with a smile and remembers that Yukatama said she would handle the drainage somehow. Now they just need to build a proper water outlet and such and blend it into the scenery. I'm back, Mistia says, while Soujirou welcomes her back. I heard you guys were building a well, but it's already done, she asks. Soujirou replies that it all went smoothly thanks to Chigusa's help, earning her praise from Mistia. Well, since she's already there, Mistia considers washing her feet, and Soujirou hurries off to fetch a towel for her. Meanwhile, the elf maiden enjoys the cool water, asking what Chigusa did as they squat by the basin. But before she could answer, Matsukaze came at her at lightning speed. When Soujirou returns with the towel, Matsukaze is already shaking the water off his fur. Our MC, on the other hand, offers to get more towels upon seeing how Chigusa is a wet mess. Mistia asks the girl if she could stand, and poor Chigusa is crying because after all the hard work she did today, this is how it ends. But yes, she'll try to stand. Off-grid cabin? Well, what is an off-grid cabin? An off-grid cabin refers to a building or lifestyle designed to operate independently without relying on public utilities. Soujirou tells them that it's basically building a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, like deep in the forest. For fans of the great outdoors, surely you've already heard of that term, right? Soujirou got the idea from when he was binge-watching bushcraft videos. So basically that's what you're doing now, huh? Chigusa asks. But isn't it kind of boring for just a video? She adds. Meanwhile, Mistia has a hard time keeping up because what is a video? Anyway, to answer Chigusa's question, Soujirou points out that videos with girls doing it gained lots of views. Wrong move because Chigusa catches him red-handed. So, you mean the ones with clickbait thumbnails using boobs? Darn it, he could only smile and twitch a little in answer. After a beat, he sighs, telling her, you really just said it, that was a can of worms. Suddenly, Mistia understands their language as she starts teasing him for watching boobs. In his defense, he was just telling them that those kinds of videos have high views. Chigusa catches him again. In court talk, that would mean, I saw it, but I'd rather dodge the topic. Heh. Our MC can only narrow his eyes at her. This girl really knows how to ride a mood when it suits her, no? Anyway, back to cabin talk. Soujirou tells them that A-frame cabins come in all kinds of styles, and he's considering building one as a rest area. So far, the only places with roofs in the compound are the individual huts, the storage shed, and their eating area. In other words, there's nowhere specifically meant for taking a break. Personally, he wants to separate the place where they eat and rest, thinking that eating meals will taste better that way. Misty is pretty fine with that, and well, is it really something he needs to talk to her about? He points out that he plans to make a big one, so it might take a few days to finish it. There are other useful things I could be making, so I was wondering if it's really okay to make something like this for a little bit, he tells them a bit awkwardly. To that, both girls only stare at him in silence and exchange looks before replying to him. Mistia smiles and says, although she's happy that he's thinking about them, she urges him to care more about what he wants. If it's something you want to make, then you don't need permission or anything, she assures him. I think it's totally fine to just make what you love. Chigusa raises her hand to join the conversation. As for her, she already has a bed and toilet, so she really doesn't need anything more. As long as I have a job, I won't get kicked out, right? She asks worriedly. Mistia slaps Soujirou on the back, telling him that even though she was granted power as a divine emblem, she has to make the most out of it and have fun. And that's all the assurance he needs, with Soujirou thanking them both a little shyly. From there, he progressed quickly with the resting area and drafted a plan with Chigusa. While doing so, a voice suddenly speaks, commenting about how Soujirou finally acted on creating a proper bed for his brilliant fairy. Of course, it's Signaria. She looks over the plans while Soujirou comments how, when it comes to pride alone, this little fairy dwarves most humans. Warning, I reject the term big, she says, looking at him menacingly. She even warns him that if he doesn't take it back, she'll flood him with cedar pollen. He was about to ask if it's glass, but Seineria quickly clarifies that it's not glass. However, she can make thin, transparent walls. All she needs is wood, water, and a silky moss-dissolving solution. Oh, Masubi! But of course she quickly adds that mainly she will be the one to make it, even though Masubi's material is just as crucial. When she asks him if she should make it, Soujirou only hangs his head in response. A moment later, Seineria appears, carrying a CNF film made using a spell to shrink things by a brilliant fairy, aka her. Soujirou couldn't believe his eyes. That's cutting-edge material right there. Anyway, trees are made up of fibrous cellulose that's been compacted. CNF is a nanofiber version of that cellulose, shrunk down to 1/10,000th the thickness of a human hair. CNF film, a special paper made from CNF, has performance comparable to most polymer materials. Chigusa checks the CNF film Seineria brought, while Soujirou continues to explain the material's properties. It's lightweight, super strong, and airtight. It's stronger than steel and doesn't let air through. Plus, its fiber width is smaller than the wavelength of visible light, so it lets light through. Seineria tells him that with this they can make windows. Oh, for sure. Soujirou knows they can, and absolutely flawless ones at that. Then that means this brilliant fairy can use it as a bedroom with no issue, right? Seineria confirms with him. Soujirou points out that it's fine as long as she's aware that it's still a shared space. To that she bows, saying of course whatever master wishes. With furrowed brows, Soujirou asks her if she's not thinking that just because she can control it, the space is basically hers, is she? There was a pause before Seineria denied this allegation. That silence totally means you were thinking it, he points out. Instead of denying such, Seineria suddenly disappears out of thin air. Seriously, Soujirou sighs. Well, at least they've got all the materials now, so it's time to build it. Now, A-frame cabins don't have a particularly complex structure. Basically, all you need to do is build a wedge-shaped box big enough for someone to fit inside. To start, they laid a large stone foundation, then built a square frame and thin boards for the base. On top of that, they used the CNF film to create something like double-pane windows, leaving an air layer between them. This layer will take care of waterproofing and insulation. Following that, they line it up with solid wood boards and voila, the floor is done. Next is the part that serves as both the roof and the walls. Using Chigusa's shadow spell manipulation, they take two wooden beams that are already joined together at an angle and line them up over the floor. Just with that, you can already see the basic framework take shape. Soujirou and Chigusa stand together to assess their work, with her commenting on how it looks like a triangular tent. Well, that's pretty much the basic idea, he points out. Moving forward, before they put up the walls, Soujirou had Chigusa lay out the loft floor. The girl seems to be enjoying this, especially seeing how the place will be cramped and dark. Just perfect for her. Soujirou then reminds her that they need to add windows up top too, and she's more than happy to follow his instructions for installing the said fixture. Once the door, outer walls, and windows are in place, Soujirou sticks the CNF film over the outer walls to waterproof them. While he was doing that, Chigusa asked him why he didn't just use his divine artifact to fix everything in place. Doesn't using craft gear guarantee that it will block both heat and water so they won't have to use the CNF film? You're talking about that artifact that can make buckets so watertight they don't let a single drop through, right? He asks. When Chigusa confirms that that's the one she's referring to, Soujirou says it's because he's scared it will block the air too, and they will all suffocate. Okay, now that got her scared, but this is exactly why he's fixing things point by point. Now after applying the film, they lay boards over it, then paint them with black coating. And so a few days after starting the new cabin, it's finally finished. They now have an A-frame cabin in their compound. Mystia congratulates him and asks how he felt when making it. Soujirou admits that it was tough, but seeing the finished product made him realize that it turned out much better than he expected. It's worth giving a shot. She beams because he sounds exactly like a craftsman with the things he said, but even she has to admit that the structure is really well made too, because the divine artifact helps balance out the different kinds of magical energy in the materials from all the various races. It doesn't feel overwhelming, she tells him. Additionally, she comments that although it looks plain, it's got atmosphere, which is really nice overall. Soujirou only stares at her, because what the heck? He didn't expect to hear such a deep take on his work. And what does she mean by magic power? He doesn't really get that part. That sounded like something an elf would say, Seineria says, suddenly appearing out of nowhere to chime in. Mystia points out that she is actually an elf, in case it's not obvious enough. To that, the fairy claps back that elves observe both the outside and the inside, which is fine, but they don't always consider whether it actually gets across to others. That's why people say elves are arrogant, she quips, her comment striking a nerve in Mystia. Well, if Seineria stops to carefully pick her words when trying to express how something feels the moment she sees it, then it will be too late. You can explain your interpretation all you want afterward then. Seineria sits on Soujirou's shoulder, explaining that teasing people is a privilege of the fairy folk. Elves, on the other hand, do it unintentionally, which makes it even more annoying. Scenaria tells them both that magic is all well and good, but emphasizes the elements of the newly built structure. Despite the lack of ornamentation, she says each board has been finely finished, and the materials were chosen so that the knots are not visible. One can feel the aesthetic of a race that values wood grain itself. Additionally, she points out that solid black paint might seem like it would blend in and hide the building within the landscape, but in the forest, painting a geometrically shaped structure black actually makes it stand out more. There's also the way the magical light reflects off the solid wood interior walls, filling the space with a warm, gentle glow. A thoughtful touch, master, she concluded her commentary about the new shared area. Soujirou starts blushing, asking if that's what she really thinks. Well, he's happy to hear that it turned out the way he imagined. On the other hand, Mystia is shocked to see him taken in by that arrogant fairy's words. She tries to ride the wave, telling Soujirou that she was thinking the same thing too. Scenaria wins this round, unfortunately, because annoying as she is, she's right when she says good taste alone isn't enough, you've got to be quick and know how to say it right. Soujirou tries to break it off before their bickering escalates, telling them that Chigusa also worked hard on this project. But the girl is still traumatized from what Scenaria did to her. Please don't throw me into the battlefield. I'm just some random pebble on the ground right now, she says while cowering. Ultimately, Soujirou drags her butt inside, suggesting they also check the interior of their new shared space with Mystia tagging along. Once inside, Mystia and Scenaria find the newly made bed. It's just like the fairy requested, a double-sized air mattress bed. The latter proceeds to lie in it, saying how the room looks suitable for mating. As the brilliant fairy, she'll give it a 70 out of 100. Though she points out that Soujirou's desire to do it definitely comes through. Take this! Soujirou smashes his fist right next to where Scenaria was lying and sends her flying. He's finally fed up. So you mean to say all that effort to read the creator's intentions was just a build-up for that punchline? God, she's annoying. With an unreadable expression on his face, he goes to tell Mystia that she doesn't need to worry about anything. He finally understands that fairies are just too evil, while the latter only gives him a thumbs up in agreement. Anyway, the base of the bed can be folded, they just need to break it down and collapse the legs and it becomes half the size. Basically, it can double as a bench. Now as for the big window on his right, he shows them that there's a black film up top, so if they pull it down it will block the view from outside as per Chigusa's request. Mystia smiles and agrees with this one. Sometimes it's better to have no sunlight coming in after all. Now they move on to the biggest feature of the window. He pushes it and it opens up directly out onto the wooden deck. Mystia looks around, amazed at this feature. She stands starry-eyed, and yep, that's it, that's the face Soujirou wanted to see. Chigusa, on the other hand, asks if this is like a secret base, but Scenaria snobbishly tells her that saying stuff like that just makes her look worse, especially with Mystia and Soujirou being the most excited. The comment made Chigusa feel ashamed, while in his mind, all Soujirou could think of when he heard that was how the youngsters are getting giddy. Anyway, at least with the construction of the cabin, they now have some breathing room. Wait, what does he mean by that? Well, since they've got extra water and sleeping space now, they'll be fine even if they go to the village and buy a bunch of stuff or end up catching something unexpectedly huge. Oh, Chigusa finally understands what he's getting at. Speaking of that town, Soujirou says that place has some really good merchants. With that said, if he can make something that might be useful, he plans on bringing it there. I bet they'll be happy, he says. Making handmade goods and selling them occasionally, then using that for a little luxury is the kind of slow-paced life he secretly longed for. Chigusa offers to help him with that and he's more than happy to welcome her. Alright, he'll give that a shot and do his best, but for now he'll take it easy. That's Yurify, right? Chigusa additionally says, girl, what? Meanwhile, back in the town, Sedek and Doraro are still in the middle of addressing something. Remember the twin venom serpents Mystia and Soujirou killed a few chapters back? Well, the merchant Doraro and Viscount Sedek still haven't found who to sell the antidote to, given how it's the antidote to some of the deadliest poisons. At least Sedek came bearing good news and may have found a potential buyer. It seems like a certain king's heir got wounded in battle and poison got into the wound. Ever since then, the lad has been fighting for his life. So what? Doraro asks if Sedek has been casually talking to a royal supplier. Nope. Even better. He's been talking to the king himself. Bro, what? Doraro goes off, telling Sedek to take custody of the antidote and store it in his state. The older man is distressed because if something happens while it's in his possession, it will turn into a national incident. That's a no for Sedek, saying his warehouse is already stuffed with junk as it is. Then throw out the junk, Doraro demands. Sedek takes offense at that because how dare he call that junk. Besides, Doraro's warehouse is the cleanest and most organized. Plus, it was his son who told Sedek to just leave it there. But what's the big deal? As long as they take responsibility for it, then there's no problem, right? At least that's Sedek's thinking. Well, he's not wrong, but as Doraro said earlier, if something happens, then the blame will be on them. Kidding aside, Sedek asks the older man if he's really okay with this. For one, Sedek's worried about what will happen once Soujirou comes back. Doraro assures him that the latter should be fine for over a year with the supplies he gave him. Plus, he has also arranged more than enough spices and medicine for Soujirou, so he's welcome to come and collect them anytime. If the number of people increases or if they get eaten by magic beasts, he'll probably come back right away, won't he? Sadek asks. Or what if instead of collecting, he shows up to sell even more? Huh? What is this man saying? Doraro points out that with how much they've loaned Soujirou, he could sleep for 10 years and it would still be fine. To that, Sadek raises him a better analogy. But if the painting I made sells for a high price, I'll paint even more regardless of the amount, he says. The older man's face slowly contorted in frustration because he's right. Now he only prays that Soujirou remains asleep. On the other hand, the cause of Doraro's frustration is really considering going back to town again soon while petting Matsukaze. Master, I request a banquet, Cynaria says, sitting pretty at this sudden request. Soujirou stops what he's doing and repeats what she said. A banquet? Looking at where she's seated, of course, he had to ask. So are the contents of that barrel sake? Cynaria tells him that he is correct. To be fair, this excellent fairy has an ulterior motive to reconcile with Dark JK, Chigusa. As far as Cynaria knows, humans like fairies, so they're not allowed to be without them forever. However, admittedly, she's bothered by how Chigusa acts around her. In his mind, Soujirou comments that this must be Cynaria's self-consciousness as a tyrant speaking. Anyway, at least even this excellent fairy knows that Sake is effective for expanding connections, which is why she will hold a banquet to try and improve her relationship with the Dark JK. Oh, and before she forgets, Cynaria mentions the large bag on the table which Soujirou noticed just now. He walks over to it, asking if she brought it. Suddenly, she puts on her aviator glasses, being nonchalant about how excellent fairies have connections with plant-based things. Huh? And where did she even get those glasses? Cynaria opens the bag and sinks her hand into the contents. As soon as she shows the white thing to Soujirou, he goes into shock. Huh? The excellent fairy peers through her shades asking if he knows its value, but Soujirou is still reeling from shock. Why? It's because it's rice. The poor guy remains speechless as Cynaria flies over and settles on his shoulder. She pulls his lobe and asks, is this not worth opening the lid for? Our terms are just drinking, is that okay? Why is she suddenly speaking like a gangster though? Soujirou finally turns, looking at her with so much adoration in his eyes. Thank you, I don't believe it, you can get rice, he beams. Easy peasy for Cynaria, but first, is she allowed to come home to Soujirou now? Shall I sculpt a statue, he offers her. Which do you prefer, stone or wood? The excellent fairy is a little taken aback by his reaction, because is he being for real? Soujirou continues that he prefers anything over 1,000 types of pleasures. Furthermore, he tells her that if there's anything she wants him to do for her, then she should just tell him. Upon hearing that, Cynaria narrowed her eyes and turned serious. There's just one thing she wants from him. The excellent fairy requests that he not say such things lightly in the future. Huh? Okay, now Soujirou is confused, waiting for her to continue and explain. Cynaria tells him that he doesn't seem to realize that beings like her are precious. Compared to the performance of divine tools, she tells him that rice and other stuff are just trivial. On the other hand, this forest before them is something that can only be utilized by Soujirou, so he shouldn't act so humbled by the forest. Heck, Cynaria even tells him that if he wishes for it, he could leave this forest. In fact, it would be pretty easy to rule over and bring the largest kingdom in the world under control. Heck, they could take all the world's treasures and luxuries for themselves. It's a pretty trivial matter, Cynaria says. There's no need to hide a small container in this kind of forest. Then she asks Soujirou something that had never crossed his mind. How would you tame a divine tool that can crush the world? How about regalia? Will you reign and devour as a present god and conqueror? If that were to happen, Mystia would be happy and surprised with me, he answered, concern painted on his face. And from Cynaria's perspective, that would be a pleasure. Still, Soujirou shakes the idea away because it sounds too much like a grand story. He only scratches his head awkwardly and tells the excellent fairy that, more than getting rice, he'd rather give delicious things to excellent fairies. This time, it's her turn to be surprised by what he said. Cynaria finds his answer satisfactory, floating again to be near him. If you're going to give me something, she begins, then please provide a substitute for something I borrowed from an acquaintance's warehouse. She's back to wearing her sketchy glasses again, palms out as if ready to collect payment. Suddenly, she's a gangster again. Soujirou only stares back at her for a minute before asking, you wouldn't say you stole it, would you? Cynaria, of course, denies this and tells him that even if he straightforwardly and boldly tells a fairy, sorry, it will only become a legal matter. Plus, according to her, to them, this amount is as good as a mere grain of rice. Did she say they? So there are multiple people? Soujirou sighs and agrees, fine, he'll make them something proper to show his gratitude to those people. Cynaria adds that that's how it is, besides, since even they can become dolls, it should be fine, though their kind isn't exactly what you'd call humans. Well, that settles it. So now Soujirou is left with the task of informing the other two about the banquet. Yay sake, yay rice. Mystia and Chigusa dance together celebrating these two new items Soujirou shares with them, while Makaze runs around. Meanwhile, Soujirou and Cynaria watch them from the side. She's not even saying anything, but he could already feel that the excellent fairy is not too pleased with this development. In his defense, he brought both the sake and rice because he wanted to celebrate and socialize with everyone, okay? And just as he suspected, the excellent fairy is not pleased. She's brooding and giving him the look. I refuse, I didn't ask such a thing, she replies while glaring at him. Too bad for her, Mystia doesn't care about her mood. In fact, she thinks it's cute of Cynaria to act that way. Plus, she just loves this kind of thing. Who knew the elf maiden was a sake lover? And she's also pretty hyped up at the thought of eating rice. Soujirou can't exactly reprimand her now since he's quite enjoying how much she's praising him so excessively. Then he turns to check on Chigusa, and just look at that, our resident goth girl is panting like crazy. It's rice. Rice, 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 she mutters repetitively, like a prayer. Seeing her looking so delirious like that, he only hopes Chigusa spared a moment to acknowledge the excellent fairy for what she did. But that's when he heard Chigusa say 4 of the most pitiful words he has heard in this world as of yet. It's been 4 years. Soujirou can only cover his face because poor Chigusa, she's been on a no-rice diet for the last 4 years now. No wonder she's so skinny. Upon hearing those words, Soujirou can't bring himself to have her interact with Cynaria now. So just like that, everyone agreed to help prepare the meal for tonight's banquet. Chigusa is tasked to forage for the mushrooms and wild plants, accompanied by Yukitama. The beast spirit checks if she picked the right ones, while she's happy enough to see that a lot of grass and mushrooms have grown in the area. Cynaria also picks mushrooms out of her own free will, bragging about how this good fairy can find such good mushrooms. But her snobbish attitude is met with Chigusa's admiration instead. On the other hand, the river shrimp hunting team, which consists solely of Mystia, caught a pretty big one. Even Soujirou is surprised at how big her catch is. But looking closely at the crustacean, he notices that it's getting blander by the minute. He tells her that he wants to catch more for tasting, prompting Mystia to ask if it's really necessary or if Soujirou has a certain preference. To that he explains that Japanese people are quite fond of eating aquatic creatures. Hearing him say it like that makes Mystia compare him to a merperson. You wouldn't eat a merperson, right? What is she saying? There are no merpeople in Japan, he replies. Huh, but wait a minute. He stops and asks if mermaids are included in merpeople. Mystia looks at him ready to laugh, but when she sees the serious look on his face, her face pales. I'm kidding. Just kidding. Soujirou says, trying to save face. Phew, at least that's good to hear. No cap, that scared her for real though. She swishes water on his directions, but now, Soujirou made it a point to withhold the legend of the 8 white giant dragons from her. Once all of them have gathered the ingredients, they're off to their next tasks. Mystia is put in charge of making the nut flour, while Chigusa is busy working on grinding the dried seeds in the stone mill to make flour. As for Soujirou, he's on knife duty. He chops the vegetables and nibbles on them a bit to check the texture. So far it tastes okay, though they're simply boiled with just salt. To his surprise, the river shrimp Mystia caught has a pretty strong flavor. It's actually pretty good. From a few feet away, Mikase starts running toward him, then patiently plops down to his side, waiting for his master to feed him. Are you interested, Mikase? Soujirou asks before throwing a piece of meat to the fluffy beast spirit. Mikase catches the parcel with his mouth quickly and starts running around in circles happily. Seeing him do so pleases Soujirou, who asks his 4-legged friend if it was tasty. Mikase sits beside Soujirou again, asking for more, but the latter firmly tells him that he's already had one. With that, Mikase trots away sadly, ears and tail down. Soujirou was about to resume his work when he heard grumbling from the side. He was just about to tell off Mikase again, but what he saw instead almost left him frozen there. It was Mystia, crouched to the ground, also asking for just one bite. She closes her eyes and opens her mouth while Soujirou cannot believe the sight before his eyes. What kind of temptation is this? Thankfully, our man's a goody two-shoe and feeds her a piece of meat, just like he did with Mikase moments ago. Just like that, another piece of cut meat is gone. But wait, the mischievous elf maiden called a friend, so there goes Chigusa also getting on her knees, asking if it's okay if it's like Mikase's. What choice does Soujirou have but to give the girl a piece as well? Soon enough, they finished the prep, and just like that, the banquet began with a cheers. They clink their glasses filled with beer to kickstart the occasion. By the way, the beer they have has a fruity aroma with a refreshing taste on the palate. There's a slight sourness that somehow makes the meat taste even better, and yes, even the foam makes it more delicious. As for the dishes, they have bear meat steak served on a wooden plate. The steak is cooked on a grilled wooden board with a smoky finish. Mystia takes a bite of the dish and finds it delicious. She finds it strange because even though she usually grills meat, this one has a woody aroma. For the next dish, they also have fried filet meat. Its coating is a mix of potato starch and wheat flour, deep fried to perfection. Although it's a bit salty for Sojirou's liking, he finds that the dish Mystia prepared goes really well with the beer. He also checks on Cynaria, asking if she's okay with the food. Since she's pretty tired today, he bets the food must taste pretty good for her. But the excellent fairy remains snobbish as ever, asking him not to spoil the mood. By the way, the dish Cynaria is eating right now is an assortment of tempura. They're a mix of wild plants, mushrooms, and river fish soaked in white batter before deep frying. Speaking of river fish, Soujirou also prepared the river shrimp paella. This one is flavored with herbs and oil with the whole and halved shrimps incredibly savory. Chigusa is full-on crying while eating her rice bowl tempura right now. Oh, for the first time in years, she proclaims as she sheds tears of joy. Looking at her, Mistia wonders why she's crying, so Soujirou has to explain that the former had kept saying before how the food in the other world was unappetizing. Kudos to her for surviving well, huh? Mistia points out that if that were the case, then Chigusa should have just made her meals similar to Soujirou's. Cyneria inserts herself into their conversation, saying how an excellent fairy like her cannot cook but can contribute to the mood. Though now she also understands that in another world, 99% of their race also cannot cook. Soujirou wants to meet that 1% though, of which Cyneria points out that their population lives quietly. There was more feasting while they talked as the night went deeper, until finally they all cleared the plates and were only left with the campfire and each other's company. Mistia breaks the silence and shares from what she knows that dark magic users normally eat people, right? Chigusa adds that they also show illusions, prompting Cyneria to ask why that is so. Plus, using dark magic with no faith? She questions how Chigusa is able to do that. Or maybe the court's treatment of her was pretty subtle, no? Chigusa brags that this is just a cheat for her. And as for faith, well, she believes in Shonen Jump. Speaking of that, it made Soujirou feel sad because now that he thinks about it, his only regret is that he died before the manga he was reading was finished. Chigusa shares the same sentiment. Mistia asks what kind of manga they were talking about when Chigusa smirks. So you've already heard about it, haven't you? Mistia, clueless about the topic, replies that she doesn't really get manga talk, but she is curious if this topic is taboo. Soujirou chimes in and says it's pretty much that. Actually, he adds that Chigusa's murmurs are imitating that, making the latter embarrassed. This is why that story is considered taboo in the first place. Anyway, since they're here, Chigusa figures they should do it. Talk about Chigusa's otherworld reincarnation arc. A high school girl who gained cheat powers ventures for the sake of making sweets, she mutters while breaking the fourth wall. Wait, why is she suddenly the one narrating now? So we finally get to hear Chigusa's story. One Monday morning, she recalls how she was on her way to school when she fell down the stairs at the station. From there, she felt something warm and then closed her eyes. In the pitch-black darkness, it was there she found a gate. Once she opened her eyes, Chigusa found herself in a dim forest. And she could tell quickly that she must be in another world. Thus, her life as the otherworldly Iono Chigusa began. At first, Chigusa lost a lot of her memories. She sat for a while trying to recall where her school was and who her friends were, but heck, she never really had the latter from the start. In the middle of her recalling, half in tears in a foreign world, goblins suddenly came and attacked her. In a panic, Chigusa climbs the nearest tree, and in the heat of the moment, she utters a spell she didn't know. That was when she discovered she had dark magic, and it went fwumpstonk and saved her. What does even fwumpstonk mean? Anyway, back to the story. Chigusa got out of the forest and somehow stumbled into a town. At the gates, the guard initially refused her entry because, duh, she has no money, only yen from her previous world. Of course, the guard found her coin peculiar, but he still took it and let her pass. So yeah, Chigusa paid all of her 290 yen in toll and ended up penniless. She chanced upon a wandering mage who suggested she head to the Adventurers Guild. And what else is the girl supposed to do but sign up and become an adventurer? There she discovered that to prove that you killed a goblin, you have to bring its right ear to the guild. That's pretty savage, so that's a heck no for her. Additionally, the concierge told her that hunting and logging are prohibited in the forest closest to town, although she urges Chigusa to cut down the monsters freely. Well, even Chigusa knows that adventurers die. It's a pretty scary and gruesome experience, which is why she designed a plan to quit being one, save up money, buy sugar, and make sweets. Just now, Chigusa had just killed a few goblins while hiding among the trees. At this point, she relays how the only isekai story she knew was the one where someone conquered the world through sweets. The only downside is that in this world, sugar is hella expensive. Chigusa gets down from the tree thinking that if her sweets become popular, she'd sell them in a shop and live in luxury, so goodbye to this savage life. She was so deep in thought that she didn't realize that there was someone else in the area as well. Hey you, a swordsman calls out. You're that mage who showed up recently, I don't know, right? He asks her if the spell she used just now was dark magic, because if it was, then that's a pretty rare talent. Right next to the guy is a girl, and unlike him, she's much more wary of Chigusa, commenting how this is her first time seeing magic like that. Is that a problem? Was our girl's deadpan reply. The man quickly backs up, explaining that wasn't what he meant by it. Meanwhile, his companion glowers at Chigusa. Come on, she huffs, turning away from Chigusa. If it's dark magic territory, monsters will gather fast. Oh no, wait. Chigusa didn't mean to be that snobbish. Also, holy cow, she's been luring goblins here to fight, but she never stopped to consider if this place was too close to town. Is it too close to town? Is she drawing in too many monsters? Should she clean up corpses faster? Crap, she didn't know any of the rules and nobody bothered to explain, so she just winged it. How can she apologize and tell them she never meant any of this? But before she could speak, she was already left alone in the middle of the forest once again. That's nice, a comrade were the other words she could mutter. If it isn't obvious enough, Chigusa is an introvert through and through. With that said, she could never make friends unless she gets adopted by an extrovert. She thought of that as she went back to the guild to hand in proof of her kill. While doing so, she hears a commotion from a few feet away and sees the adventurers crowding around a knight. The others wanted the knight to join their parties, and an idea occurred to Chigusa. Maybe if she got stronger, people would approach her on their own. That was the plan. But one day she met another dark mage and received a grimoire. "We are not like the countless mediocre spellcasters," the masked dark mage began. "We pray to the stars beyond and open this world to the Father. It doesn't matter if it's me or you, the only goal is to open the gate," he says. With that, he walks away, rambling about how he's looking forward to a new brother in chaos. What the heck is that guy even saying? Chigusa thought. Anyway, the grimoire. Well, she couldn't read it, unfortunately, but she was able to recall more about dark magic. As she flipped through the pages, she discovered that summoning magic is the strongest kind of dark spell, but rather than that, she prefers to summon something cuter or at least cooler. Oh, I know. Cut to the next scene, we see the first look at Chigusa's skill. Shadow manipulation technique, octopus, she yells, binding her enemies easily. Now that she remembers it, the laws of the old world don't apply in another world. Screw copyright law. With her newfound power, it didn't take long for Chigusa to become strong enough to wipe out a monster nest by herself. As she proudly surrenders the proof of her kills at the guild, Chigusa really believes that she'll finally be one of the cool kids. She did that alone? That's insane. Has she reached the summoner's rank already? Somebody go talk to her. No way, she's a witch. Chigusa can hear it all. Her plan backfired, and if anything, she finds herself more alone than ever. She's back at the same forest, wondering why that is so when she hears a cry for help. Chigusa saved the two from before, with the guy explaining that they'd come to investigate rumors that a shady cultist was luring monsters. "Are you talking about me?" Chigusa asks, and the guy's partner bluntly replied that they had their suspicions that it was her, so yeah. However, she points out that they realized that they were wrong. The monsters attacked Chigusa too. And besides, it's even worse than they imagined. That's what she says, the man said and continued. But she was the one who said, since you're using the forest as your hunting ground, the most at risk would be Iono, so let's take the request. This made his companion flustered, insisting that what she told him before was that she found Iono the most suspicious. Anyway, small talk aside, he asks Chigusa, "Hey, why don't you join us? I know you prefer being alone, but right now if you're on your own you'll be suspected again." In her mind, she didn't bother to correct him that she was actually trying to make friends. With a smile, the man extends the invitation to party up again, adding that they can't handle the monsters alone anyway. After a beat, she finally agrees, saying she'll help with that request. Finally, comrades at last, Chigusa thought as she sat opposite them in front of the fire later that night. And this is all thanks to dark magic. Thank you, grimoire guy. You must have given me this for this reason, she thinks. Things progressed pretty quickly from there because the next day they already found the cultists. Their enemies had tons of monsters with them, and it ended with a fight. Continuous chant. Octopus head gate. Chigusa unleashed her skill, and from that alone our girl is obviously stronger. She took down almost all of their enemies single-handedly, while the latter couldn't believe what was happening. What kind of chant is that? And where are her sigils? He cries, if you honor the gods beyond the stars, follow the rituals. He even asked about the grimoire, but Chigusa's pretty nonchalant about it. She has no idea how this guy knows about that weird book given to her, but she did tell him how she didn't get the book. But the guy is close to losing it, rambling about how the world is corrupt and making Chigusa back up a bit. Chigusa's monster swallowed the man, and just like that she defeated the cultist. Her companion comments that her magic is way scarier though, as they search through the rubble for proof of subjugation. Still, she apologized to Iono, admitting how she misunderstood Chigusa because she thought the latter was scarier. The swordsman agreed because now they had just realized that Chigusa wasn't being condescending, she was acting like what she is, a kid. Chigusa's puzzled because isn't that how she's been acting all this time? But whatever. Does this mean that the three of them just kind of become comrades now? Once again, Chigusa thanks the grimoire guy. That's when the girl suddenly finds a mask, and Chigusa is hit with a realization. The cultist was the same man who gave her the grimoire. She shows the dark book to the two and they are both shocked. However, this is all the proof they need of the subjugation. Chigusa, on the other hand, is trembling because does this mean she'll also be treated like a cultist too? They started to act weird, with the girl saying that maybe she too will be suspected. The guy, on the other hand, says that they will just have to cover for Chigusa. But the panic-stricken and overthinking Chigusa couldn't hear them over her worries. That's when they told her that she's on dinner duty, and with a smile assured her that she would cover for them. Well, that camaraderie was short-lived because an hour later Chigusa ditched them. The two searched high and low for her, while Chigusa quietly hid among the trees watching them search for her. Well, that was close, there's no going back now, she muttered while watching them. In the next town, Chigusa bought sugar, and that's when she remembered that she didn't know how to make sweets at all. And that concludes Chigusa's Isekai reincarnation arc. But wait, why did you run? Soujirou asks her. Chigusa has her reasons, and she thinks that using sweet words when you haven't done anything is proof that they were trying to deceive her just like those cultists. The poor girl is traumatized when they pretended to be kind while exploiting people's weaknesses. She can tell she experienced it firsthand. Mistia hugs her tightly, teary-eyed as she promises never to abandon Chigusa. Meanwhile, Soujirou feels the same and pities the poor girl. Compared to him, this girl really had it rough. You've really had a tough time, huh? But now Chigusa assures him that she's full now. Hearing and seeing her like that is enough to make Soujirou's heart full too. But wait, there's more. Chigusa tells them that they should look forward to Chigusa's isekai court arc. The high school girl tricked with promises of delicious food wants to go wild but can't next time. Soujirou can only hope that this next one is more hopeful than her previous story. Anyway, she turns to Mistia saying, speaking of royal court, when they invited elves to court, the elves said, "We grow on trees, so no thanks," or so the rumor goes. So here is Chigusa's question. Do elves come from pollen or something? Mistia breaks into a smile. I've heard that one. That one's just an excuse to turn it down. The elf maiden explains that elves are born and raised in the forest. They'd never want to be born in a human royal court. That's just what it means. But as it turned out, humans from the past just took it literally. As for where they were born, Mistia says they were not born from trees, but elves use magic. What, like they make babies with magic? Soujirou asks innocently. With Chigusa, Mistia bursts out laughing. No way, not with her. Out of everyone, it had to be Soujirou. No sooner had the words come out of her mouth than she backpedaled, blaming it all on alcohol. What the heck are you guys making me say? Stop it! But to Soujirou, that sounds a lot like self-destruction. It's already awkward enough, but Chigusa just had to comment on how elves can also laugh at dirty jokes that made Soujirou facepalm. Mistia makes them promise to keep their mouths shut or else she'll curse them, though we kind of wished she also made the exceptional fairy promise to do so as well. From the smirk on her little face, it looks like she found quality blackmail material. Much later that night, Soujirou carries a dozing Mistia in his arms and is surprised to find her so light. But the joke's on him because Mistia is actually awake. In fact, she's in a state of panic right now. A few moments ago, Mistia realized that she must have dozed off at some point during their banquet. With her eyes still closed, she felt Soujirou's presence, but she couldn't be bothered to wake up. Initially, she was just planning to keep pretending to sleep and drift off again. And now, this is how she finds herself in her current situation, in Soujirou's arms. Knowing him, he'll probably carry her back to her room. If that's the case, she thought that she might as well let him be. Walking is a hassle at this point. Just so we're clear, Mistia issues a disclaimer. It's definitely not because being held like this is making her body feel hot or anything, okay? Mistia could sense that they had entered the room and she thought that once he laid her on the bed she'd wake up. She'll thank him, and even if he tells her that he knew she was just pretending, Mistia will just laugh it off. Wait a minute, this bed, did he put her on the cabin deck? Suddenly she remembers what Cyneria said about this place being an ideal mating room. But that's what the fairy said, right? What does she do now? She did remember saying something along those lines earlier. On the other hand, she could feel Soujirou removing her hairpin and letting her hair down. She's getting more flustered by the second because she doesn't have any experience of this kind. She feels Soujirou sit right next to her, and again she realizes that now is no longer the right time to wake up. Soujirou gently caresses her cheek, muttering about how beautiful she is. Guess I'm going to what? Going to what? Mistia is almost reeling, but she keeps her eyes closed, and then a moment later she hears the door slam. Ever so slowly, Mistia opens her eyes, realizing that Soujirou just laid her down in bed. Suddenly, she hears a huff and quickly looks over. There she is, Cyneria. She lounges on the couch, beer in hand, while looking at the elf maiden. You saw that this whole time? Mistia asks. Do you want to hear a very detailed commentary by an excellent fairy? Was the latter's clapback. But Cyneria grew more serious as she asked her follow-up. Do you really think I'll let you say everything to the end? Before Mistia could reply, the excellent fairy disappeared without another word. The elf maiden turns to the other side of the bed, muttering, "Curse fairy folk." And that's when she noticed that Chigusa was lying still, or at least trying to be still, right next to her. Chigusa, are you awake? The latter answers awkwardly that she's asleep. Girl, you shouldn't have answered at all. But this just made Mistia realize something. Chigusa was also carried and laid down, right before she was. The elf maiden moves closer and brushes Chigusa's hair back as she asks if the latter was pretending to be asleep this whole time. Caught red-handed, Chigusa has no choice but to admit the truth, while Mistia asks if the girl didn't even bother to open her eyes. I just didn't know what to do, was Chigusa's almost tearful answer. Mistia decided to lie back down on her side, saying this is all Soujirou's fault. At least Chigusa agrees with that as they both stare at the ceiling. In over 200 years of living, I've never panicked like this before, she mutters, making Chigusa sit upright in bed. Is it first love? She asks excitedly. But the former says this is not the case. Soujirou is human, and she is an elf, so that's not possible, right? Well, Chigusa weighs in that Japanese people marry elves too, or don't they? How was it again? Mistia dissuades her, flustered, because the way their conversation is going is pretty dangerous. But is it okay or is it not okay for intermarriage among different species? Does it matter if it's okay or not? Chigusa asks. That got Mistia acting all shy and demure as she mentions that she turned someone down way back. Of course, this piqued the younger's interest. Suddenly all eager, she asked the elf maiden what kind of person it was. So just like that, the two spent the night at the cabin having girl talk, while Soujirou remained seated by the bonfire. He hears voices and thinks they must be awake. Must be nice being young, huh? He says to no one in particular, but he's not alone, as Cyneria suddenly pops out of thin air and mentions that she should have just stolen wine instead of beer. Welcome back, where were you? Soujirou asks. After pondering for a bit, she tells him that she was out appreciating the arts. Anyway, she takes this chance to commend Soujirou for his good work tonight. He, on the other hand, is curious if this excellent fairy has already made up with Chigusa. I've got her weakness in hand. No problem, she answers, satisfied. Well, that can't be good. Soujirou thinks this will be a huge problem. All in all, this banquet was supposed to be a fun drinking party that brought everyone closer, or so he thought. The next day, Soujirou finds Mistia staring at him while she bathes in the river. As soon as they lock eyes, the elf maiden turns away and starts splashing the water at Chigusa. Of course, he notices how Mistia has been acting strangely since this morning. It made him wonder if he has a bad drinking habit. Cyneria raises her scoreboard and gives him 80 points, saying the excellent fairy would just think that's fine too. Why does she talk like that? Now Soujirou sits by their vegetable garden with Yukitama, noting how everything is growing steadily. But his mind keeps wandering back to Mistia. He's worried since she went out hunting in that state, will she be okay? His train of thought gets cut when Makase suddenly appears, and the mutt barks apprehensively. What's wrong, Makase? Where's Mistia? Is she not with you? But Makase continues to bark and then dashes back to the forest before stopping to turn to him. Yukitama suddenly follows suit and Soujirou feels his blood run cold. No way. Soujirou runs along and follows Makase with Yukitama running beside him. As they delve deeper into the forest, they soon see a silhouette not too far from them. Mistia. He calls out to her worriedly, and then for a moment Soujirou feels his heart drop. There's Mistia, smiling and covered in blood. What in the world happened to her? Mistia, are you okay? What happened? Soujirou asks worriedly. The elf maiden casually tells him that this is not her blood and motions to the creature before them. It's this child's, she answers. And the creature in question is a bound and blindfolded dragon of all things. They all return to the compound where Mistia apologizes to them for suddenly bringing a dragon out of the blue. Soujirou says it's fine since if it were him he'd probably do the same thing. The injured dragon from earlier is now in Mistia's hut. The dragon in the hut seems to belong to a species called wyvern, and wyverns are said to be extinct. When she first chanced upon it in the forest, Mistia was torn between helping it or leaving it to the laws of nature. Ultimately, she ended up choosing the former. Also, the blood. The reason she was covered in blood is that she tried to cover the poor bloody creature with a cloth when it started thrashing around. As a result, Mistia got soaked in blood while she was trying to calm the wyvern down. Soujirou was factored into the situation because she needed a guard against monsters lured in by the scent of blood. At first, he offered to carry the dragon back to camp, but Mistia already had it covered. Well, now that they know the whole story, Soujirou suggests she washes all the blood off. She quickly bolts to the river with Chigusa trailing behind her. Meanwhile, Soujirou bathes the blood off Makase when Mistia returns, all cleaned up, before going low and putting her ears against the ground. Soujirou had just told her how fast she was when she told him that the wyvern was pacing around. It looks like it still hasn't calmed down, she says. It might scratch the walls. Sojirou's not too worried about it, but Mistia is. In fact, she's worried about a lot of things. She's already mumbling under her breath about how she'll keep a splint on its injury and watch how it goes. She's a bit troubled since healing magic isn't her specialty, and the fact that the dragon is wary of her may present some difficulties. Maybe it's better to leave it to its own recovery. She mumbles. Finally, she turns to Soujirou, asking if it's okay to take some branches with leaves on them since she wants to put them inside for the dragon. Soujirou tells her that they're in the workshop, so she bolts off to fetch them and thanks him as she does. She seems kind of flustered, Soujirou noticed on her. The next morning, Soujirou woke up with something pressing on his chest. It was Makase, staring down at him with the most pitiful eyes. This prompts him to get up and check the surroundings. The sun isn't even up yet, he mumbles. Looking around the compound, he notices a light shining on Mistia's hut. Soujirou gets out and asks Mistia what she was doing out there. She faces him, worried about the wyvern. He understands where she's coming from, but it's still so dark out she should still be in bed. That's when she told him that this is the first time she has ever seen a dragon, and mind you, she's been here at this forest for 20 years now. That's excluding the 200 plus years since she has been alive. For so long, Mistia thought that dragons had gone extinct ages ago. Now that she has one right before her, she doesn't want to let them go extinct right before her eyes. Soujirou can only watch her watch the hut without saying a word. Ever since that day, Mistia has been constantly attending to the dragon. One time, Soujirou tries calling out to her to discuss something, but the elf maiden is in a rush to go get some magic stones. On another day, he asks Chigusa if she has seen Mistia, and the goth girl responds that the latter has gone hunting since there's a specific meat it will and won't eat. Then on another day, Soujirou asks Salinaria where Mystia is. The fairy replies that she has gone to look for stones, making Soujirou scratch his head in frustration. Their timing is just off. Actually, the brilliant fairy just told the elf maiden to fetch some pretty stones since Mystia asked her to watch over the dragon's condition. Aha, so it's her fault Mystia's gone off again. And yet on another day, even Mikase is feeling sad and neglected. Soujirou asks him if he has seen Mystia, but Mikase only whimpered. He can't blame the dog, Mystia's running around so much that even Mikase can't keep up. Soujirou looks at the hut just then, mumbling, "A dragon, huh?" Just like that, the days went out with Soujirou unable to have a proper conversation with Mystia. So when he finally finds her snoozing in the lawn chair, the elf maiden wakes with a start at the mere mention of her name. She gets flustered, apologizing for dozing off, but he feels worse for disturbing her rest like that. "Sorry, I'll get going," he says. But Mystia won't have it, asking Soujirou if he needed something. "It's fine, just get some rest," and walks away. Mystia chases after him, and after stuttering a bit, she asks if something happened because she's been acting this way lately. She starts firing off one question after another, desperate to help Soujirou with whatever. "Was there something you wanted to eat? Should I go hunting? I'll do my best," were her frantic ramblings. It's not like she was slacking off just because she's solely focused on the dragon. Soujirou had to stop her mid-sentence, telling her that's not the case. He thought he'd ask her something. "What is it? Ask me anything." So about that dragon," he begins shyly. "I wanted to ask if it's okay for me to go see it or touch it." "Huh, wait, is Soujirou interested in dragons?" Our MC shamelessly says he is and that he wants to try petting it. Dragons are cool after all. Mystia beams, happy to hear that. She grabs both of his hands and tells him that it will warm up to him properly and he can even pet it now. "It's fine right now, so do you want to come and see it?" Hell yes, he is. The wyvern stays low on the ground, growling at Soujirou. Our MC is a little worried, seeing how the creature is growling. Is it really safe? Mystia assures him that it's fine. She grabs him by the shoulder and squeezes Soujirou right next to her, showing the wyvern that there's nothing to be scared of. "Friends, see?" She smiles, telling the creature that she's buddies with Soujirou. The latter does the same and even does a little wave. True enough, the dragon allows itself to be pet by Soujirou as it inches closer to him, little by little. So now our MC is enjoying giving the wyvern next pets. He also finds the creature's body pretty warm, meaning it must have a pretty high temperature. No? The wyvern stares back at him intently, so Soujirou had to stop before the creature looked up. Soujirou does too and notices that the hut may be too cramped for him. "Maybe I should take the roof off," he says. This alarmed Mystia, reminding him that the wyvern's wing is still broken. If it tries to fly, the injury will get worse. Instead of addressing her concerns, Soujirou talks to the dragon, asking the little guy if he could stay put. The elf maiden is taken aback by this development as she asks Soujirou if he's talking to the wyvern. Honestly, he's not really sure, but Soujirou thinks the wyvern senses the presence of the craft gear and seems to like it. It's pretty similar to the reaction of the other spirit beasts. The impression was that the divine tool was inside the arm and not the hand. So whenever Soujirou holds out his hand to Musubi or Ukitama, they react by being drawn to his arm as if they're searching for that presence. Mystia couldn't be happier, amazed at this new discovery. Just look at these two, they've just met, and the wyvern is already drawn to him. Soujirou thinks that this may also be due to the mother goddess's blessing. That goddess seems to be pretty fond of living things too, just like Mystia. The elf maiden adds that maybe it makes sense that she's an unpopular goddess if she were really like that. Soujirou stops and stares at Mystia. Wait, is an elf who loves living things treated like a geek or science nerd in this world? Is that why she's all by herself? After Soujirou talked to the wyvern, the creature didn't try to run away and recovered enough to walk and run around outside. At the same time, Mystia also settled down. On another day, Mystia tells them that wyverns sleep standing up, though she has never personally seen it. As such, Soujirou decided to build a perch for their winged friend, and while he watched Mystia and the wyvern, he started to worry about something else, betting. You see, Cynaria approached him one time, reminding him that they're accomplices. This time, she requests something interesting that is not money or goods. And the specifics are that it should be something interesting, something that looks fun, something that he can also sell to Dorero, and something he himself can use. All this thinking made Soujirou think that it should also be something that would fit in a rest house and something he can rest on, like bedding. With all things considered, Soujirou decides he'll make a sofa. "I'm totally in favor of that," Chigusa quips from behind him. She says the chairs in this world are way too hard and it hurts her butt. She couldn't have appeared at a more ideal time because Soujirou needs her help. So, cut to the next panel, Soujirou shows off their newest creation, a cushion. Mystia sits in it, amazed at how soft it is and how it changes shape to whatever you want it to. Plus, it also sinks right when you sit on it. She has never seen anything like this. Chikusa slumps right into it face first, right next to Mystia. It's the thing that ruins people. It's the thing that ruins people, I tell you. Even Soujirou can see that she's getting ruined in real time. For the product name, shall we go with the sofa that ruins even elves? She asks, adding that the idea is a total ripoff of that thing anyway. In reply, Soujirou asks her if she got permission for that, making Chikusa apologize profusely again. It's one of those copyright law issues again, no? Mistia cuts into their conversation to ask what's inside the cushion. Soujirou explains that inside are evil slime cells. He shaved them down fine and made them into microbeads. Surprisingly, no matter how much you cut them, they harden into spheres. They were able to get it at the expense of Chikusa getting slimed again, but thankfully it wasn't for naught. Though Soujirou points out that she only got that way because she was acting all cool for no reason. For the cloth, he used what Musubi made, and it's better than top-tier silk. Soujirou connected every single fiber using fixation and had to focus all his nerves into his fingertips. Now all that's left for him then is to see how Cyneria reacts to his creation. The brilliant fairy gives him a thumbs up, saying she's okay with it because it's interesting. If anything, she's anticipating what she will think of it. Because she lived for 1,000 years, Cyneria says she tends to think that she knows it all. So if you show her something new, the excellent fairy is sure she will be rolling all over the place. Suddenly there was a flurry of movement as something darted from behind Soujirou. To their surprise, the wyvern slumps straight to the cushion. They can't believe it, the dragon is sleeping. Then there's Chigusa crying on the floor since she got taken out by the newbie again. Huh, wait a minute. Does this mean the wyvern can actually lie down? That same day, Soujirou filled the hut with sawdust like a swimming pool. And when he tried that, they found the dragon sound asleep on top of it the next morning. Mistia hides her face in shame, embarrassed because she's the one who told them that wyverns sleep standing up. Soujirou doesn't blame her. After all, she only knew their behavior from legends, right? It couldn't be helped. The wyvern starts yawning, making Mistia turn her attention back to it. Whoops, sorry? Did I wake you? It's okay, go back to sleep, she tells their winged friend. Soujirou watches her with a smile, relieved to see that she's fine now. Who wouldn't be worried after seeing how tense she was during the past few days? The next day, Soujirou notices something. Mistia is keeping her distance and is acting strangely again. Even Chigusa notices this. The elf maiden practically drowned while bathing in the river and spilled her soup too. Mistia stares at Sojirou's back, and when he turns to look at her, she quickly whips her head back to the opposite direction. What the heck? Mistia doesn't look like she's okay, so what the heck is going on? Why did Mistia start acting weird again? Chigusa and Ukatama were minding their own business, munching on their food, when Soujirou dropped his latest concern at them. Mistia is acting weird, at least around him. But before they could ask him about it, he simply phrased it in a way that was concerning enough for him. Chigusa, tactless as ever, is mildly surprised that he's actually aware of it now, huh? But you know what? Sojirou's concern is valid, as she recalled how Mistia stayed underwater while they were panicking. The poor girl panicked upon seeing their elven friend like that. Soujirou, on the other hand, noticed Mistia was spacing out during the meal too. Cyneria also shared that their elf maiden's hand stopped moving, though Soujirou could not figure out for the life of him why this fairy talks smugly when she has a rice grain on her face. Anyway, he remembers Mistia was acting weird after the drinking party too, but this instance seems a little different from that. Usually she says something to him, but now she just left without a word. Heck, she even left Makas behind too. Poor dog. This left Soujirou with one conclusion. She's avoiding him. The moment he thinks she's watching him, Mistia suddenly looks away. Yeah, she's avoiding him, right? To that, Chigusa asked if he had done something. There is a pause before Soujirou admits that he doesn't know. But more importantly, what should he do? He doesn't know why she's acting like this, but he asks Chigusa if there is any way he can make it up to their elven friend. Huh? Make up? As a loner, Chigusa has no idea what that even means. Oh crap. You know what? Never mind. He forgot that she's just a high school girl. And just because she's a girl doesn't mean she knows everything about her kind, no? Okay? Why does that commentary make it sound like Chigusa's being the one consoled right now? The two were still chatting while Cyneria listened to them from above. Then there's the topic of their conversation, Mistia herself. At the moment, she's busy jumping from one tree to the next, a troubled look plastered on her face. Like Soujirou, she too was thinking about him. She feels bad about how she ended up avoiding him unintentionally. Even Soujirou must have noticed by now, right? As she plants her foot on the next branch, propelling herself forward, she somersaults and makes a perfect landing on the next tree before halting altogether. This behavior isn't like her at all. But then again, she can't help how she's feeling, not when Soujirou said something like that. So what exactly happened? Rewind. The night of their little drinking party, remember how Soujirou put her to bed when she was actually awake? Now Mistia woke up as soon as he set her down. She's left contemplating a lot of things, especially about how she caused him a lot of trouble. Soujirou didn't even get mad about the dragon and actually helped her out. Initially, she wanted to help him since it looked like he'd struggle on his own, but now it seems that she hasn't been able to show her good side lately. While lying in bed, she mutters about how she can only hope that he doesn't hate her. All this thinking got her losing her confidence. Ugh, she's just so lame lately. She even got that thing about the dragon wrong. When Soujirou said he was interested in dragons, she got too excited and clung to him. Just remembering that is enough to make her cling to the mattress even more. Wait a minute, she sensed something. So she asked if Sanria was there and the fairy appeared. Mystia used this chance to ask the latter if she's knowledgeable about Japan, with Sanria saying it's so-so. Anyway, Mystia is curious about what Chigusa said. That thing about how the Japanese are fine with elves, is that true? Though she never really reiterated what Chigusa said. So Scenaria had no idea what Mystia was referring to, much to the latter's shock. She can't believe Scenaria wasn't there. But yeah, anyway, Mystia asks her if it's possible for a human and an elf to get together. As soon as she said that, she backpedaled. Forget it. Just to be clear, it's not like she has any ulterior motives, okay? But instead of dismissing her, Scenaria raised a better question. What if Soujirou, the Regalia, were the one interested? Mystia has never thought of that before. Soujirou is the Regalia, after all. But she kept forgetting that since he doesn't give off that vibe. Plus, he's kind too. Mystia feels it must be nice to be with him. Heck, even Macass has warmed up to him. He has always been like that, even when they first met. But no, scratch that. Mystia shakes her head. She shouldn't even take what the fairy says seriously. This just makes her feel like all she's thinking about is weird stuff. But then again, maybe she should think about it, no? When it comes to elves, humans always scowl at them right off the bat, and understandably so. Their lifespans and cultures are just so different after all. Mystia then asks Scenaria if Soujirou has ever said she was a nuisance or mentioned anything along those lines. To that, Scenaria flies closer to Mystia to whisper something to the latter's ear. According to what this brilliant fairy has heard, Soujirou said that he'd rather be with Mystia than have all the luxuries in the world. The elf girl is stunned to say the least as the image of him smiling with Macass flashes in her mind. As soon as realization hit, she instantly turned beet red. Does that mean what she thinks it means? Chapter 21.1. A end. Back to the present, recalling that memory was enough to make Mystia blush. Suddenly, she slapped both her cheeks to regain her senses. No. Now is not the time to be reminiscing about that. First, there's something she needs to do. With that, Mystia powered up her step and jumped to Kingdom Come. Probably. Later that day, Soujirou looks out at the woods, a bit worried. Mystia still hasn't come back even when it was the usual time of her return. Wait a minute, could it be that she's not coming back at all? Now that he remembered it, she did take a big bag with her, didn't she? No, that can't be it. Mystia wouldn't leave without Matsukaze and the wyvern that easily. But this just made him assume the worst. Thankfully, before he could fully form the idea, Mystia appeared, apologizing for her late return. She knows Soujirou got worried, didn't he? At that, he admits that he did worry a little. Mystia chuckles and thanks him for it. Anyway, now that she's here, he's curious, where did she go? Judging by her getup, she didn't look like she went hunting. Mystia puts her huge backpack down and starts opening it to show the contents to Soujirou. You see, she went out to collect this. He squats down and looks at what appears to be rock fragments. Mystia actually says those are eggshells. Huh? All of those are eggshells? Mystia explains that there's a place where a huge bird builds its nest. After the chicks hatch, the eggshells aren't needed anymore, so there are plenty lying around. That's cool to hear and all, but Soujirou can't help but ask, why did she collect these? It's because she heard from Chigusa that he wanted eggshells. Anyway, the location was a bit far away, so she had to use black magic and run all the way there. With that said, she thought it would be nice if he could use them. Oh, she went out of her way to collect all these eggshells for him, running around even though it got so late. Looking at her acting all shy and demure like this, Soujirou felt touched by her efforts. Mystia suddenly shoves the bag into his hands, assuring him that there's a lot more where that came from. If it's not enough, she can go and collect more. Soujirou is appreciative of her effort and says it's not that. He just thanks her and welcomes her back. Beaming her usual smile, Mystia replies with, I'm home, and the two just spent a moment smiling at each other like that. Mystia is the first to stand, flushed and embarrassed. Meanwhile, Soujirou carries on, holding the huge knapsack and trying to look at her while Mystia keeps getting out of his line of sight. At this point, the two are pretty much like a carousel, going round and round. He couldn't take it anymore and asked what she was doing. The elven maiden tries to play it off, laughing as she tells him that it's embarrassing, before he finally tells her to cut it out. As soon as he said that, she bashed her head on his back as she clung to him. Again, Mystia tells him that it's embarrassing, remembering what Cyneria whispered to her at that moment. When she finally speaks, she just tells him how easy it is for him to say such embarrassing things. Feeling defensive, Soujirou points out that he didn't, but Mystia insists that he did. End of story. So what else was he supposed to do but agree to her unreasonable logic? He doesn't really get it, but what he does know is that Mystia worked hard just to help him. From the moment they met, she has always enjoyed gathering materials and trying out all kinds of ideas together. Just as she first suggested, she's someone who shares in the surprise with him. And yet he's aware that he's the one who gets surprised. And sometimes he also wants to do his best to surprise her instead. Just like that, the two have resolved their miscommunication like that. Mystia asks him what he will make next time, to which he ponders for a bit. Finally, he tells her that he'll probably make something fun or maybe something delicious. As they returned to camp, what greeted them was a hollow-cheeked Chigusa, complaining about how hungry she was. The two felt bad, so Soujirou went off to make something tasty right away while Mystia apologized for making the younger girl wait. She then turns to Mikasa, her furry friend, apologizing for leaving the black pup behind too. At this point, Chigusa tags along with Soujirou and notices how Mistia is back to her usual self, so she asks her older brother what the issue was. Our MC's a little shocked at the question because honestly he still has no idea what the issue is. Chigusa looks at him with concern for the first time, because it looks like her older brother really is dense like this, huh? Ugh, even Soujirou felt the knife jab at her sharp commentary. Since she didn't get a satisfactory answer, Chigusa asks the other party, Mistia, instead, why was Mistia avoiding big brother Soujirou? Huh? Mistia's all fidgety again, sporting a slight blush on her face. She tells it as it is, she was just overreacting. Chigusa, ever so practical and looking out for herself, had to ask if this won't affect her food, clothing, and shelter from here on out. It won't affect them, right? Mistia promises that it won't. On the other hand, Cyneria has other problems in mind. Even though they have good snacks, she finds it shameful that they don't have any wine. Soujirou, who has been listening to everyone, thinks about how he wants to eat fruit again as soon as he hears Cyneria mention wine. What's this sun-colored and sweet and sour fruit before them? Why, it's an orange. Both Chigusa and Soujirou are happy to see a familiar item after all this time. What's more, Ukatama also brought a sapling with it, prompting Soujirou to ask if the mythical beast wanted to plant it in the field. Yeah, Ukatama just happened to bring oranges and saplings back to camp one day. Chigusa holds a piece in her hand, proclaiming how the fruit is actually a luxury item. That piqued Soujirou's interest, so she explains that in this world, oranges, as well as other fruits like grapes and apples, are considered expensive. According to her, even plums or wild strawberries fetch a pretty good price. For Japanese people like them, oranges and the like are a bit sour, but she's not complaining this time. Besides, Soujirou points out that it can't be helped since they can't do anything about the fruit's sourness. Still, he thinks it might work if they turn them into jam though. Chigusa remembers that there was something like it, strongly flavored and not very good but sweet enough to be edible. It's kind of like a paste. She says to make that, small fruits are crushed, mixed with honey and spices, then boiled until it thickens. Even with that taste, it was better than the others. With that said, she said the only reason real salvation is when one can eat fresh fruit raw. While she was busy yapping, Soujirou already cut a piece of the orange and handed one to her, asking if she wanted to taste it. Of course, when did Chigusa ever reject food? She took it, and it's as good as she expected. She snickers to herself as she remembers how the king couldn't even eat this. Ha! Fruit harvested from the forest of the sacred tree? You never heard about that. Her smile becomes even more sinister, relishing in the fact that those people would never experience this kind of luxury. Serves them right. This is what they get for not giving her good food. Soujirou's focus is on the orange, noting how it has so much juice. Yeah, this would work in what he had in mind. The acidity is just right, so you drink in the sweet flesh, and the aftertaste immediately draws you to the next one. Ha! It's hard to believe he gets to eat fruit this delicious. He thanks Ukatama and Musubi for their efforts, then hands another piece to Chigusa, urging her to eat more. Meanwhile, Mistia had just returned all dirty and shabby. Our elven maiden friend seems to have gone through a lot today, huh? Even poor Matsukaze is spent. Soujirou welcomes them back with a glass of water in hand. He asks what happened, to which Mistia excitedly tells him that she found something really amazing. It was so amazing that even the forest beast started targeting it. As she gulped her water, she continued that this discovery of hers is so amazing that even the forest beast started targeting it. You know what else? It turned into an area where magical beasts that prey on other beasts keep appearing too. This is exactly why she had a hard time collecting it while fighting them off. Instead of feeling excited, just hearing that made Soujirou worried. If it's that dangerous, then isn't it better if he helps too? He's not going to stop her, but it makes him worry about the way she's doing things. At that, she starts fidgeting. As much as she appreciates his offer, it's not quite bad, or rather, yes it is. But anyway, Soujirou thankfully got the cue and changed the subject. So he asks what she found in the forest instead. Oh right, that's the important part. She rummages through her back pocket and shows him a piece of orange. So yeah, the very thing she fought the beasts for is oranges from the forest of the sacred tree. Upon seeing that, Soujirou pulled a face. His smile was so thin that he practically had a hard time controlling his reaction. Mistia, on the other hand, is excited, saying they should eat it together. After a beat, he finally breaks into a smile. Wow, they should eat it together. Seeing the delayed reaction, she finds his lukewarm reaction fishy. Hump, he really doesn't get it, does he? Even nobles couldn't buy something like this, no matter how much money they threw at her. Plus, she boasts it's incredibly delicious. Soujirou tries his best to put on a really happy face. He's grateful, you know? After all, Mistia worked really hard to get this. Since he said it like that, she quickly turns to the direction of the camp and suggests they eat it with everyone. At that, Soujirou panics. Wait, if Chigusa doesn't instantly grasp the situation and choose the right first words, then it'll spoil everything. But too late, Chigusa already sees Mistia approaching, fruit in hand, and says the exact words Soujirou hoped she wouldn't say. Oranges again? Mistia stopped in her tracks. Did Chigusa just say again? There goes Mistia's excitement. Still, she finally understood how Ukitama got its hands on the fruit first. Of course, it's because he's a spirit beast. Magical beasts are less likely to antagonize them, so Ukitama could harvest the fruit pretty easily. Disappointed as she may be that she's not the first to bring the food to camp, at least it's tasty. Soujirou joins both girls at the table as he remembers that the pasture will be finished by tomorrow. Oh, Mistia didn't expect it to be finished already. Soujirou and Chigusa really are amazing. If that's the case, then she's pretty sure they will be happy too. They being the Wyvern and Matsukaze. Their most recent adoptee is now healed and stays mostly outside except when sleeping. Because of that, they decided to make something like a pasture so it could run around, and with an accompanying shed to boot. They also made a shed for Matsukaze, who's apparently still going to grow. After all, Mistia said their furry friend is a magic world called a black wolf. It'll grow big enough for Soujirou to ride when it gets older. Before they resumed construction, Soujirou took the opportunity to apologize to Chigusa, since there had been a lot of similar work around camp recently, like logging and building sheds. Actually, doing those activities improves Chigusa's octopus cleaning skills too, so she's pretty happy about doing that kind of work. Soujirou never thought of it that way. Now that she said it, there's actually no need to rush, right? He just realized that this isn't work, he's just doing it because he likes it. He welcomes this realization and thanks Chigusa for it by saying she's smart. Now that got her flustered. She is? Oh, he must be referring to when he saw her practice the octopus dance. No? Doing all 8 arms at once is actually hard for her. Okay, maybe she's not so smart. Maybe she's just not thinking at all. Soujirou conjures the craft gear in his hand, saying that even if one repeats it, it's not exactly the same every time. Just now, he could feel the goddess's hands on his hands guiding him. For so long, Soujirou thought that after being granted a divine tool by the goddess, there was nothing more for him to accomplish. But now, that doesn't seem to be the case. Tools are just tools after all, and what matters is what he wants to do. That's what determines where that power is directed. With that, he makes it disappear just as quickly. Guess he'll take it easy then, huh? As if on cue, Sonaria appeared and already had something to say. Thankfully, it's a compliment as she's surprised at how spacious the pasture is. But that's not why she's here. She's curious because recently, Soujirou has been spreading something white and sticky by the window. What is that? Did she really have to say it like that though? Even Soujirou was weirded out. He tells her that it's a starter he made by mixing flour and water. Oh ho, without anything else to say, Sonaria just told him to look forward to it. Girl, look forward to what exactly? Somehow he feels scared. The next morning, Soujirou woke up with a frown as he could feel something bright was illuminating his room. Scratching his eyes, he squints, wondering what it is. To his surprise, his starter is glowing. And of course, levitating right above it is none other than Sonaria while striking a pose. As expected, the superior fairy appears to shine, right? That's not exactly what Soujirou meant, but she proceeds to explain that the glowing orbs are actually lesser fairies. They like milk left by the window and grain liquids. Since she, the superior fairy, is actually a great fairy, Sonaria's underlings ended up springing forth. So this whole fiasco is all because of Sonaria? She refutes this, countering that Soujirou is the one who caused this. Because of the altar he made, he practically aired a forest-wide invitation. And in a divine domain like this, did he really think that fairies wouldn't appear? This conversation is stressing him out because what does she even mean by that? Bro just made a bread starter for goodness sake. Well, whatever. He permits them and says all who come are welcome. Sonaria assures him that as long as he doesn't treat them roughly, they're pretty harmless since they just wander around and require no care. If anything, they'll be pleased if he occasionally leaves something white by the window like this. Soujirou looks at the orbs more closely before checking his starter. Huh? About half of his starter is gone. To that, Sonaria says she will handle it. She grabs one of the orbs, tosses it high in the air, and spikes the thing straight into the starter. What the hell? Didn't she just say moments ago not to treat them roughly? The poor guy is horrified. In Sonaria's defense, the rule doesn't count when it's fairy on fairy. Suddenly, there was some movement in the starter, and soon 2 glowing orbs emerged from it. The orb split. Sonaria surmised they wanted the fermenting organisms, which is why Soujirou left the starter out. With this, he can finally ferment as much as he likes. So all this time, those orbs were basically like yeast. He was today years old when he discovered fairies were microbes. Anywho, one necessary process for making delicious bread is to add yeast to the dough and let it rest, allowing it to ferment and enhancing its aroma and richness. Since there's no industrially produced yeast in their world, he decided to rely on natural yeast. To that, he mixed flour and water well in a 1-to-1 ratio, then left it for several days at around 30 degrees Celsius. Using that as a base, he got a starter rich in yeast. He takes the starter all while thinking how he never thought lesser fairies would be born. Still, he's glad that the starter turned out fine. Now, let's make some bread. First, add salt and sugar to the starter flour. Then add hot water, mix and knead. After that, put it in a pot, cover it, and warm it a little. Let the dough rest inside to ferment once. From there, he just needs to adjust the temperature and location depending on the climate and humidity. Once it's doubled in size, he lightly presses it with his hands to release the gas, then repeats the process. After that, he divides the dough and shapes it into rounds before putting them back in the pot. Next he covered the pot with a stone lid, placed charcoal on top and slowly baked both sides over low heat. And it's done. Bread, check. The orange jam he made for this, check. He rips a piece of bread into two, eager to try it right away. But just when he was about to put it into his mouth, there were Chigusa and Matsukaze staring at him with that puppy look. Erg. No, he backs away, saying this is just a taste test, but so what? If that's the case, Sinaria puts her hand out, asking for it. In the end, he shared the bread with them and the trio cheered. Matsukaze and Chigusa practically had to fight for the loaf. Now then, time for a short interview. When you hear bread, what comes to mind? Mistia says it's the kind you dip in soup, while Chigusa answers that for her it's wheat flour that turns black when baked. Aha, at least she tried to answer, didn't she? Soujirou acknowledges her efforts. Mistia's idea about bread seems pretty hard and stiff though. Anyway, this bread Soujirou baked is soft, so they can eat it as it is. If they want, they can even put jam in it. As soon as both ladies took a bite, their eyes started sparkling. Chigusa is eating messily as ever, but who cares? This bread is sweet. She's pretty sure this one will be a sellout. Mistia, on the other hand, is now asking the right questions. How much should they charge per piece? Looks like the bread really is a hit because Matsukaze likes it too. Sinaria already finished hers and says that as thanks she'll give him a warning. Okay, that's disturbing, but what the hell, sure. To that she tells him that the bread is perfect for entertaining, so if he serves this they will be delighted. Again with the cryptic messages. Soujirou asks who he will be serving it to, but the latter won't spoil it. Instead she tells him that he'll find out soon enough as she floats away before disappearing entirely. Well, she gave one last hint. A big guest will be coming soon. True enough, everything made sense to Soujirou and the others later as our MC stares wide-eyed at their guest, the guest being none other than the Heavenly Dragon Master itself. The creature is significantly bigger than the wyvern and ogles at the little one. The creature arrived sooner than Sinaria expected, while the Dragon Master excitedly commented about how it flew in. Soujirou can only narrow his eyes because he just knew that something troublesome had just shown up.